right. Hey, welcome everybody. I think this is it. Welcome everybody to Hash Church 3.0, the Bubble Hash Rosin episode. Yes, the episode will start with me looking around, mildly baffled and confused. I got some people in the room right now. I'm just going to drop the link. Doing things a little bit differently today as we have a whole new panel of people that I have never invited in. So let's start admitting them into the room. What do you say, boys? Boom, 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 boom. Look at that. Nice. I like this new method of having you guys sitting in the waiting room and all I have to do is click admit. Oh, let's admit the OG of OGs. Shall we? You guys ready to share the room with Skunkman Sam?
Hell yeah.
Skunkman Sam in the hizzy. What's going on, Sam?
Nothing much. I just saw that note from you about 10 minutes ago, so here I am.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, man. Today we're going to sort of focus on hash production for the early part of the show. Probably mostly bubble, but we'll talk about some traditional methods and some mechanical screen separations and whatnot. Maybe even a little bit of hand rub and whatnot. I figured you'd be a great sort of OG to be in the room because I actually invited a whole new fresh panel of people, and we'll get to introducing them here in about a minute. And they all came from Instagram, so they're sort of all up and coming, and some are fairly already substantiated. They have brands. They're doing, you know, they're well on their journey.
I've never been on Instagram.
I know you haven't, which is unbelievably awesome. But you don't need to go on Instagram, Sam.
I've never had a cellular phone.
That's also pretty tripped out. That's very tripped out. So let's introduce some of our panelists here today. We've got we'll start with Goldilocks. He's at the top of the. Actually, let me see if that's correct. Yes, you are. You're at the top of the queue here, bro. We know each other from Instagram briefly, having some conversations, and you were one of our customers at Whistler Technology for a WT300, getting into a little bit more of the commercial aspect of water hash. And I want to have that discussion as well once you kind of, introduce yourself and whatnot. I want to get into that talk of, is there a way, the same way, I guess the argument is, can we grow cannabis large scale and still keep the quality there? Skunkman Sam says yes, only because he's done it before. So now the next question is, can we still keep the quality there with hash if we bump up our amounts and we're no longer doing little hand-stirred batches, but we're rocking 50, 60, 70, 80 kilos of biomass at a time? So introduce yourself, brother.
I'm Mike. I run Goldilocks here in Sacramento. Been making hash for a good amount of years now. We're kind of more so focused on rosin now just because we've been doing such large batch. But like you said, we are doing large batches with the new Whistler Tech equipment. I agree with Sam that we can do large batch and keep the quality just the same as it was with small batch. So I think it's just a matter of using the right equipment and having the right people running it, really.
Yeah, well, you guys aren't just, go ahead, Sam.
And the right priorities. Quality always has to come over quantity, period.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely agree with that. Whatever material we're using is definitely the number one factor. Try to only use stuff that's going to come out good. And as long as we're doing that, I have no issues with our hash we've been having come out.
Yeah, the SOPs are important too, and it's why I've always found that the most amazing hash makers that I've met over the years have had a background in cooking and as a chef. Chefs really understand the SOPs of a kitchen. There's food safe. You don't want to cut with this knife with the chicken and then cut over here with the fruit. And these simple, very simple little things seem to get the mind of a chef prepared for following steps and not missing those steps. And I find that, to quote Sam, which is a hilarious quote because I certainly don't think of him as a religious man, cleanliness is godliness. And it's great if you're using the great material and you're doing everything kind of, you've got the good tools, but if there's someone in there, throwing that SOP off by not following simple little rules. I mean, one that blew me away was back in the day when when Alec from SC Labs told me that this oil company had failed, their shatter failed E. coli testing. And that's like, basically, that's some guy who's made the hash and gone and taken a shit and not washed his hands properly and come back and dealt with the product. And it's just, I mean, that's disgusting right off the bat, as generally we are as human beings. And that's why the SOPs, these standard operating procedures, become so very, very important. And I'm sure you noticed when you picked up a 300, a WT 300, it came with SOPs out the yin yang, like that thing.
Yeah, I think it did. I don't think I used any of the SOPs that we got. I think we just kind of, the Whistler guys came down, we ran it once with them, and then I think we just kind of winged it from there, you know, kind of figured out what worked well for us. But I will say the best hash guys that I have right now on the crew do have kitchen experience. The ones that made it through and are still working there are all have kitchen experience, and they definitely I think that you're right about that. That definitely helps.
The best hashish is actually untouched by human hands, and I have monkeys doing it here.
Yeah, never touched for sure. So thanks, Goldilocks in the house. I think we're going to move on over to Brian Fortin. Gonna get him to introduce himself. Let us know where he's coming from.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, brother.
Okay, cool. Well, my name's Brian. I own Best Friend Farms, and I'm coming out of Maine these days. The last few years, I shifted back from over a decade in the Emerald Triangle, and I've actually focused on classic hash form. So I'm thinking that we get, you know, we're doing some fresh seed or some fresh frozen into seed, but ultimately anything sticky, we're balling up. Very strict regimen with living soil organics. I'm really flower first and just really enjoy live beautiful cannabis flower. And it all comes from that. It's really about the flower. The new hash platform in the classic technique or way I'm approaching it is really about personal appreciation for that form of hash. From geez, my dad was making hash for Christmas parties back in the 70s, starting in Maine. So I guess it's kind of like second gen. And I'm aware of the other processes. I had a rosin pro younger guy named Have Hash that was pressing some really high-end rosin probably 4 to 5 years ago, but I've shifted back to the classic form. And I don't know, just attention paid to the resin more than the tech. So I guess it's a little different and I'm looking forward to the new tech coming, but we started with dry resin sieving first. So the hash maker, who's only a year in under me under training, he was a chef. That's a new thing today to click on. That in him, he's like he's a graphic artist chef, and we'll just call him Tom. And he's really just paid the closest attention, and then learning the resin quality through me and helping him to see it. We breed half the strain on and try to feature other companies' work as well, new strains. So yeah, I don't know. I'm also want to mention that I kind of wanted to pay attention to the 40 plus crowd, not to exclude the younger folks, but I'm 40 this year myself. And it's funny because the younger folks are turning a real eye, almost sometimes more so, on the classic hash form, with really wanting to learn about it. As far as Temple Ball, as far as even we press some blonde, but again, we really focus on full melt. And the bubble hashing it really turned things for us, and going with it, keeping it raw and trying to just keep the resin as good as we can. And anyway, that's where I'm at.
Well, I love that you're focusing on the living soil and the flower first. I mean, a lot of you won't know this, but I had, from the original Hash Church 3.0 photo I posted on Instagram about 3 weeks ago, I had already planned the show, but in the post I mentioned, hey, and if you know any great hash makers here on Instagram, I'd love to have you guys tag those names. And that's where everyone who's going to be on the show today came from. They all got tagged. There was actually 48 to 49 people who got tagged. And I ended up doing a pre-video with about 20 plus of you, which was a really great video. And you'll probably notice today as we go through this that you will hear a lot of people say exactly what Brian just said in regards to the soils, the living soil, that sort of the bacteria, living microbials and just that living biome in the soil to produce a resin to allow that plant to express itself in a way that maybe it won't express itself being grown with salt newts. So we're definitely not, we're not going to spend the show shitting on a salt newt grow, but I definitely always, put another gold star behind each person's name as a hash maker and a hash smoker. If I know that person is focused on living soils and they're actually, focused on proper cultivars that are going to be producing hashish in a way that's a little bit more special than your average, like I said, another extra little gold star right there. So thanks for sharing, brother, all the way out.
Thank you.
All the way out in Maine. We're going to get back to you for sure. True Hash Company, bro, is in the house. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me?
We can hear you great, man. You sound perfect.
Sweet. My name is Dakota. Owner of True Hash Co. We are based out of Auburn, California. We mainly focus on just selecting cultivars that are resin-rich cultivars. I'm not much of a rosin boy. I've always preferred smoking melt, over the years, and melts, the way of the roots these days. And, we just try and stay true to what we know and what we've learned from, sometimes it doesn't always work out. You have your strains that, make more of a full spectrum run or pull in certain microns that aren't as melty as others. And we just really try and focus on cultivars that pull heavy in, your 90 to 120 range. And just really, that was like our main goal this season, was just finding very resin-rich cultivars. Just a lot of less work, and the whole go-around makes life a lot easier, especially if you can produce a very quality melt.
Yeah, no, it's a very important journey that a lot of people, there's two schools of people, and I want to be very careful because I certainly don't want to get into offending anyone. But I said it when Bubble Hash first came out, people were blown away by it. It was so new. They thought it was fake. They thought it was a scam. And the only people who saw the magic in it were the people who just happened to have super high quality hash producing cultivars that they didn't even know. Everyone thinks they have great herb, but I'm telling you, back in the day, I would sell bags to everyone, and super randos would hit me back up from like the middle of Texas or whatever and send me a picture of like full melt and be like, is this good? Like, why does it look wet? Like, I'm not sure if I did it right. And I was just like, oh yeah, you did it right, bro. And so there's these two schools of thought. The person who made 6-star bubble hash the first time they ever made bubble hash, generally, those guys are hash makers. They're not looking to create a cultivar that they're going to make into hash so that they can take it and squish it into rosin. I don't want to offend people whose trip is making rosin. Rosin's an amazing product and it's awesome. I've always just questioned, look, if you can get down this pathway and find that 6-star, you may be happy with just that. Now, there's an enormous amount of cool things we're going to talk about with rosin that goes beyond and above just extractions with Rackhams and covert extracts. You're going to get in here later. Rackhams is in the room right now, and talk about, their THCA separations and their terp slurries and their, all of these different fractions and how they can be done. And that's awesome and amazing. But for myself, I won't lie, I have a special place in my heart as well. I'm a hash smoker. I smoked it for so many years straight. I haven't smoked a joint in 19 years, if you can imagine. I haven't smoked a joint of cannabis in 19 years. And so that was hash that basically ruined joints for me. I'm going to move on and we're going to talk to Taste of Cascadia. Scott is in the house. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. Why don't you give everyone a little background again? We're kind of doing a similar thing that we did in the pre-church video, just a 5-minute or a little more is no problem. We'll go through the list and then, oh, damn it. Bobby's waiting to get in. There we go.
My guy.
We'll let Bobby in. Bobby can come in. Damn it, Bobby.
A little late as usual. So yeah, I started out probably like mid 2000s, just washing hashes with homies out in the hills of Portland, or the country of Portland, I should say. And, we were drying on cardboard. That was the tech, because it was a desiccant, natural desiccant. You know, been washing for years, everything from big old, getting a little feedback from Bobby.
I'll mute him.
Cool.
There we go.
Yeah, used to manage a big garden, a big old OMMP garden, and used to process all their trim. So, you know, was processing probably like 10 to 20 pounds of dry trim back in the day, and really developed everything from dry trim to fresh frozen. Yeah, most recently been doing everything single source, like Dakota was saying, basically searching out those good cultivars that only do good for 6-star, that crush everything out for both melt, flavor, the high, the yield, and finish time. So that's another good thing, is if it's done in 56 or around 56 days, it definitely helps out, because, you know, time is money. Yeah, most recently I also started a 6-Star Society, a clothing company, to kind of focus on gear to wear while washing. So, you know, stuff that doesn't pill up, stuff that doesn't hold on to dog hair. Yeah, and just focusing on that lifestyle. That's what I love. I love, like you said, I love smoking hash. It's my passion. I love the plant.
I love that, Scott. I love that you're doing a clothing line called 6-Star. That's great, and I love the idea of just producing. You know, it should go for growers as well. You know, I have a hard time watching people go into grow rooms and finger fuck their plants and squeeze the plants and walk by them with cotton shirts. And I'm a macro photographer, so I'm going into that plant in a way that nobody can possibly imagine. And when I see all their heads gone, like just all it is stalks like this, like in the plant. Yep. There's no heads left because they've brushed the plant so many times, or the heads are all broken, or worse, there's just like large fibers, cotton and like synthetic rayons. And I'm just like, like get that out of the hash. And that's not even taking us into beneficial bugs, which consume all the bad bugs and then turn them into shit balls on your plants. So
yeah, well, even fans, I mean, extra agitation from fans, that can create more degradation or more need for the trichome to produce a waxy head, less melty, you know. So
yeah.
And Eric Nugshots is a good buddy of mine, so it's always been helpful to talk to him, like, hey, what have you seen, you know, blah blah blah, just chat hash and chat trichomes with him, because it's super awesome to be able to see his work and to see that trichome on a macro level and understand it on its level, on it, you know, on a like super small level.
Yeah, super big shout out to Eric for sure, taking it to the next level. As a hash maker, being a macro photographer for me was essential, learning about all these things. I mean, I did have an advantage of having Sam in my corner and being able to ask him questions and be a mentor to me. But at the same time, when I started taking photographs and seeing, you know, a cystolith hair or a capitate stalk trichome or a bulbous trichome or all these other sort of anomalies that exist in the plant, I really started looking at the plant quite differently, and it's helped shape my perspective as a hash maker, just from being a photographer. So yeah, good point on that, and good to have someone like Eric, who's really at the top of the game right now, taking some of the most beautiful macro photographs that
amazing
have ever really been seen. So shout out to Eric. Thanks, Scott. Let's get to our sideways boys, who aren't sideways anymore. They were sideways. They came in like this, and it was kind of fun. I was like, all right, cool. I like, you know what? Those guys are so cool. They can come in upside down for all I care.
There's two of us. I was trying to get it horizontal.
No, I totally I knew exactly where you were coming from, dude. But thank you, Heavy Ice and Great Lake Grease in the house. These guys are a big inspiration to me. I love what they're doing. We went into more personal stories last time, which was really, we might get into that a little bit later. That sort of was the, you know, you get the profound aspect of, well, how are these guys so passionate? Like what led them to have to find the best and to, you know, want to grow all their own inputs and want to start producing their own food. So why don't you guys do a little introduction, Heavy Ice and Great Lake Grease in the house?
Go first.
Well, we focus on natural growing, and we like we like to think of going beyond just the term organics, because it's kind of such a broad term nowadays. If you can imagine, you know, what exactly does organic mean, and with the amount of products that are labeled organic nowadays and things like that, it's hard to really it's hard to compare that to using the things that we have around us outside in nature, the local herbs, the local plants, the local mushrooms, and we can use these things to feed the plants and feed the soil, and it's really hard to compare the two. So we really like to we really focus on beyond organics, and we have definitely found with our resin and the few people that we know, and there's a lot of other people that we don't know out there that are growing this way, that it really produces amazing resin and amazing hash. And we love sun-grown resin. That's another thing that we've noticed. It just seems like the sun-grown resin is comparatively from my experience, like terpier, and like I've gotten like really transparent hash. We've gotten transparent hash from indoor resin, but a lot of times when I was washing indoor resin, it was melty. It was coming out clean, but it wasn't necessarily coming out fully transparent. So that's one. So just certain things we love about sun-grown resin, and we love hash. We rosin the stuff that don't melt, but we that's our focus is on the resin. I think for both of us, Aaron will probably mention this, that our passion for growing actually really started on wanting to produce really good hash, and we couldn't really find it and couldn't find material that produced like really good hash. So it's like you gotta grow it.
Where did you guys get exposed to really good hash? Was it an Instagram thing where you would go online and see, or were you prior to that like on a website or something?
Well, I mean, in my high school days, I'm half his age, but in my high school days, I got hash, and it was bubble hash, but it was brick hash, and it was, it would clear dome, but it was not melt, and I always loved it. And I always got the High Times magazines. So I was always really passionate about resin, and we would grow hide plants in my backyard and stuff like that. And like, I was always really passionate about the resin and the cannabis plant. And it was definitely Instagram and your YouTube channel and a few other YouTube channels that exposed me to Full Melt. I can't remember specifically the first thing that I saw, but
in my case, I think it was your YouTube channel. I was already a medical patient, and I had smoked way more flower than I ever wanted to smoke in my entire life, trying to get the dose I needed. And I had, the BHO when it showed up, and I did a little bit of that for a while and liked the bigger dose, but didn't like the side effects of poorly made petrochemical extracts. And
coming out of a heavy thing though, weren't you during this time, Aaron? Like, wasn't this during your getting off pharma and losing all your weight and literally switching your life like 180 degrees?
Yeah, it was a complete turnaround at the time with everything, my diet and, getting out and exercising more and the cannabis and everything.
Almost looking for opiate effects. from cannabis, right?
Oh, well, I mean that's why the extracts were so appealing initially, because they hit a lot harder than taking 10 minutes to smoke a joint or something like that. But yeah, it was just it was really watching your YouTube channel while I was buying all the flowers and the BHO, and I had a caregiver at the time too that never even gave me one trichome of material. But I kept telling him, I want to make hash. Like I can buy an ounce of flowers from you, but it's not really going to do me any good. So just from watching you, and I knew that I had to grow in order to make hash because nobody was going to give me material. And I even tried to buy material, trim and things like that, and everybody was charging me way too much. So I finally had to grow, and that's kind of where the whole thing started.
Well, I'll tell you, if you guys aren't following them already, as you should follow all of these guys. We'll drop all the Instagram names at one point in time. But I've been watching Heavy Icer for some time, and it's just been a joy to watch him, literally just go from the sort of non-headiest person you could possibly be to the head. He went from a 25 micron, no melt, sulfur spray to a living soil, 90 micron, full melt, clear dome, watching the reflection of himself while he puffs it in the bowl. I like it, dude. I like your story, and I think you should, and it's been how many years has it been? It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
No, I think my first grow was 2014 or 2014, I think.
Right. Well,
maybe 2013.
We will get into a little bit more of what Great Lakes was talking about at one point in time once we've introduced everyone, and that's in regards to this Beyond Organics. And of course, with our regular panelists, Dragonfly Earth Medicine, that's their whole trip, is to produce your inputs. Because for people that are kind of wondering, well, what is Beyond Organic? Beyond Organic is not opening up an organic farm and then draining the aquifers for the entire surrounding neighborhood because you didn't plan to catch water the winter before. Producing your inputs on your farm so you have to put less in to get more out is what Organic Living Soil is all about. And Big Ag is all about putting more inputs from outside of your farm on each year and getting less out each year. So these are the sort of things that we're discussing. And of course, with Sam in the room, we all know Sam's history. He's probably, grown a lot more cannabis than all of us combined, probably even just for one or two of his years of his life. He has grown an enormous amount of cannabis. And I think as a hash maker, if you can have that relationship where you understand how to grow cannabis and how to choose phenos and how to start sort of looking for things that, like Sam didn't just take cultivars and start making hash and looking for one that works. Sam was breeding cannabis to make a product that works in the end product like hash. So that is also, I look up to that a great deal. I grew, but I never really grew on the level that I was able to make an effect in, producing hash, producing cultivars, which I also want to talk about at one point in time. I want us all to share our favorite hash producing cultivars. It's very important information for everyone. And I know people want to hold on to their tips and little things like this as this industry becomes more and more real, but sharing is caring, and not telling someone a cultivar that produces hash because you are greedy and a douchebag as well. Greedy and douchebaggery. So we won't be doing that today on Hash Church. We'll be sharing our information, especially when it comes to cultivars. And we're going to move over to two other awesome dudes, Wooksauce Winery and Resin Ranch Extraction. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. You guys are muted, so unmute that button. And
let him go first this time.
Yeah, no problem, dude. Good to see you, Wook.
Thanks for having us. How's it going?
It's going great, man. This is the Hash episode of Hash Church, and we're talking about hash. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I love it. So, I don't know. I got my start in Seattle and learned to grow and make hash up there about 7-8 years ago now. And just been rocking my own kind of single source hash for a while. And moved down to California about 2 years ago and started a Prop 64 recreational brand under Fully Melted, and been running big 30-kilo runs of material through a proprietary machine we've made, totally bagless system. Been running that for the past couple months and been
and they're pulling clean melt out of it.
Yeah,
I like that. I want to hear more about that for sure.
So we've been trying our hardest, definitely, to produce good melt. We entered some melt in Emerald Cup, and we've been putting some melt out on the market as well as rosin.
Good job, man.
Is that
Awesome.
wet or dry?
We do all fresh frozen. So luckily, I have a cultivation partner up in Southern Humboldt, and we grow all greenhouse in 2 different places in like Bryceland and kind of Salmon Creek area. And then we put all the greenhouse whole plant fresh frozen all toward our hash material for fully melted.
Beautiful. That's what's up. I want to hear more about your machine as well down the road. I'm sure that's
another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all,
I don't even know what he's got going on.
Yeah, I keep it pretty low key. Just we've been, doing a lot of testing and a lot of, just other things to kind of push the hash game other than just a big machine washing. A lot of like post-production changes and how we just treat the hash and stuff like that. So it's been interesting.
Beautiful. Well, like I said, we definitely will have a conversation about that, because this is where we're at right now. We're at the innovation part, and there has not been an enormous amount of innovation in water extraction almost since the beginning. It's still very much like water and ice and cannabis and filtering it through, something, whether you're using gravity like Reinhard Delp used back in the 90s, or whether or Sadhu Sam's water extraction secret from back in the day, or whether you're using a bag system, or whether you're using like a delta separation Frenchie unit, or even a Whistler Tech WT300. There's been a few other people who have, I'm in a very unique position in all of this, because generally if someone creates a machine or invents a new way of doing it, I'd say 9 out of 10 of those people email me and want to have a discussion about it. And I'm always super down and sign NDAs and whatnot. And just, I'm really excited about maintaining the melt aspect of hash while running commercial amounts, being able to get to a point where there should be no reason why we can't scale this up to a point where the integrity of the wash is not affected. I mean, it's not rocket science, resin glands sink in water due to their being affected by gravity because of their density.
Biggest factor that I see and I've seen, and I think he can attest to, is the cleanliness of the material going in is kind of the biggest factor. And working up in Humboldt and Mendo with a lot of outdoor farms, that can be very difficult.
Yeah, definitely a struggle. And yeah, I mean, coming from kind of my education background is in economics, so I've always been focused on like, how can we make bubble hash like more reach the economies of scale so that we can get, most of the market hopefully smoking like good, clean, solventless resin.
Or at least get them access to it. So if they want to choose it, it's there for them.
Yeah, it's not an exorbitant price like, $180 a gram or what have you.
Hell yeah.
After taxes.
That hits home. That was before tax. With Johnny B and I on the last two Puff Wednesdays ago, we bought a gram of rosin. It was organically grown from Whistler and turned into bubble hash in the WT300 and then pressed into rosin, but $180 a gram. That shit was hurting. I mean, my God, I was bummed out with the black market prices of prohibition, and that was generally created based on someone doing 10 years in prison. So I'm not quite sure how these prices are according to the legal market, but hopefully they figure it out. And I'm sure with people like yourself and with our own company at Whistler Technologies and others working on getting this scale problem fixed, so you can still pull that quality, that purity, because that's really what it's about. It's not about quality, it's about purity. When you make water hash, the purity has already been produced. The grower and the genetics did that. We don't make pure quality. We just purify it. We unveil what is or isn't there. And that's what we do as hash makers. And that's why, for me, I've always appreciated the humble hash maker, the one that understands his or her place is that, sure, I have some skills and I'm doing a good job, but my the timeline of me making hash is very short compared to the timeline of someone growing a 3-month crop in a greenhouse.
Huge difference.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the shit that the grower had to deal with over 3 months? And then I come in and I process it all and I post it on Instagram and everyone's like, oh yeah, Bubble Man's the man. Did you see what he did? Wow. What an amazing, it's like, come on. Like we, as hash makers, we got to stay humble.
I feel like all hash makers got to at least try their hand at growing too, so they know the realities of what that means. And then also I think it really enlightens kind of your whole aspect of how to treat material and, you know, how to process better and how to guide your farmer better on what to do. So.
I had the same idea for people who drove. I thought everyone who drove a car should be forced to drive a moped or a motorcycle for the first year of their license so they can be exposed to the dangers of driving a car cluelessly. You know, because when you're in a car, you feel this protection. And when someone's just giving you your trim and your bud, you're protected. It's like, oh yeah, like I got all this coming in over here. You know, the whole reason Bubble Man became a name was not only because I had access to make water hash before most people, but because I had access to incredible quality flour. Had I not had that access, people would not have thought what they thought about me. And I noticed often it was, oh yeah, he's got the quality, he's got the quality. It's like, well, yeah, so I have a good nose. I'm able to find quality. That certainly doesn't mean my shit doesn't stink. And it certainly doesn't mean that I'm better at this than anyone else. And the whole purpose of teaching people how to make water hash over the years was that anyone could do it as well as anyone. Yep. There is no special, oh, you're a magician. You know, no one can make it as well as you can. Man, the first couple of years into making water hash, my mom, who was like worked for the police at the time, came over to my house and I was like, I want you to make a batch of bubble hash. And she like mixed it up and did a 5-gallon batch. I gave her the material and we called it Polly's Melt because it came out 6-star. Nice. My mom made 6-star the first time she ever made hash, and she was like the straighties of the straighty.
It's in the genes.
Yeah.
It's in the genes, exactly. The plant genes.
So, my little spiel, since I have a completely different come-up story than this guy. We just live close together, have become good friends over the last few years, and do some work together. But I kind of started out just doing little grows in Wisconsin in my basement, and I was open blasting stuff and found you on YouTube, and was like, shit, you can dab water hash and dry sift? Like, what's this? You know? And actually, the first hash that I ever dabbed that was melty was dry sift. I forgot to mention that last time. I got my come up actually as a dry sift guy. Cuban gave me a shout out here on Hash Church a few years back after I gave him some dry sift at Emerald Cup 2015. And that's kind of really what opened the doors for me. And, won 2 Emerald Cups the next year. And we had a little problem with coming up dirty after and got those taken away. But it was all just a big learning lesson because year after that at the Mendo Hideout, we ended up getting DEM certification. Word. So we completely turned things around at that spot. Not that we were really being dirty. We were only spraying organic at the time, which, everybody was. But
there's no shame in learning. And I appreciate you being honest because people are so fake and shallow these days. And
we took it on.
They want to post the fake, beautiful Instagram photo with none of the reality behind it.
We lost over a third of our crop to russet mites that year.
That's refreshing to hear you be honest, man.
And I kind of, the natural transition, I had been making water hash too. And running a big farm, dry sift just kind of was a lot harder to scale up and kind of keep up with. So I kind of just transitioned over to the water hash and then naturally fell into the rosin as a byproduct of our runs that weren't full melt. But
well, the first melt I ever smoked, funny enough, was also sift. And it was in 1995 in Amsterdam at my first Cannabis Cup. And somehow I ended up smoking a little bowl of Skunkman Sam's dry sift. And I'll never forget Rob Clark standing on the stairs of this Thai restaurant that we were at. Do you remember the Thai restaurant, Sam, with all the lady boys as waitresses?
I remember that restaurant. I don't know if it's still there. But
it's not. But this was a very strange Thai food restaurant that had all ladyboys as the waitresses, and it was just a place you could smoke hash in Amsterdam. And pot people are cool. We don't give a fuck what people choose with their lifestyles, and it was great food. And so I'm hitting this bowl on the stairs of this restaurant, and I hear Rob say, "If it don't bubble, it ain't worth the trouble." And I watch the hash melt through the screen and drip down the stem of the pipe, making me cry a little bit, because I was like, knowing I wasn't going to be smoking that hash that made it all the way down to the Ruhr down stem for over 3 years, almost 4 years. It was 3. I tried to recreate that, and I tried to make that. And it wasn't until getting turned on to water extraction that I actually made my own product that melted and bubbled into a liquid. And when I first posted my company, Bubble Bags, Fresh Headies, and I chose to use the logo or the motto, "If it don't bubble, it ain't worth the trouble." And that's really, I had seen Sam and bumped into him in places, but he was very particular back then. He was very, very strong-willed and minded. He was almost like a professor that was just so above. It's like if you were the best kid in the class, maybe the professor's going to talk to you. But if you were like the middle kid in the class, the professor wasn't talking to you. So
yeah, that was me running into Cuban.
Right?
Like, oh, this is Cuban. He's the dry sift guy. I gotta, gift him some hash and see what he thinks. And to have him then chase me down and be like, "Bro, do you have any idea what you even have here?" And I honestly had no clue. I knew my hash.
Well, imagine Sam's been smoking that for about 35 to 40 years.
He's a lucky guy. That's all I can say.
We're all noobs.
Yeah, we're all noobs.
What's really going to change the industry across the board? I mean, once you've got great quality genetics that makes hash easy, gives a good yield, and you're growing it organically or biodynamically or super whatever way, then what's going to change the field is automated processing. So you'll be able to make the highest quality continuous operation. So no longer batches, you just produce it by the ton a day.
And now, Sam, you'd be the guy to ask, because I would say from what I've seen, I'm probably the closest to Cuban's cleanliness of dry sift as you're going to get without being Cuban. Do you think that is scalable to that point?
Oh, I know that it's scalable. By cleanliness, I presume you're talking about where the resin heads is 99.9 or whatever.
We get 99.8. It's the 99.9. It's like it's just resin heads.
Well, I've that's all I've been smoking for a really, really long time.
Yeah, I always called it 99.999% on Sam's. And keep in mind, like, no one had seen this product until I photographed Sam's product.
No one was telling me you gotta try Sam's dry sift. So I'm like,
oh, trust me, it was the strongest thing I've ever tried in my life. And because there's a difference, Cuban makes incredible dry sift, and he's got a great breeder. Sam's unique because he lived in all the hashish producing countries. He collected seeds. He bred those seeds into hash producing cultivars. He grew those seeds. He made hash. That's the fucking holy grail right there. If you're doing that, you are golden.
I tried to make hash out of a lot of varieties which didn't really pan out because either they yielded poor or the resin just, was not 6-star. What can I say?
I say I'm the first guy to say that I kind of got lucky in the sense that the first thing I ever tried sifting was an incredible dry sift strain. I'll still say that 5-6 years later. So I don't think I would have gotten to where I got if I hadn't got kind of lucky that first try.
Well, everybody should contribute the varieties that they think make incredible dry sift, because that's a resource that the whole world could actually use. I'll start with skunk number 1. DNA Sleestack.
Yep. And it's actually a DNA strain. It was a training day. Yeah, it was a training day. I can't remember what the cross is on that. And yeah, I grew out about 20 seeds and found one that I liked, and it just worked. And I ended up losing that, but
I like dry sip from plants which you dried, cured, and then to get the resin off. You just look at it funny and they fall off.
Yep, pretty much. You touch it and you're done.
You're also growing all biodynamic, organics, living soil, Sam.
Yeah,
like you've been doing that forever.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I've that's pretty much my style too. I'm trying to do as much single source as I can. I have like 2 or 3 other farms that I'll wash for, and they all are KNF, as closed loop as they can, kind of style. Not DE certified, but.
Has anybody else noticed that bigger plants, so the same clone but grown 12 feet tall, has bigger resin heads on it than that same plant, 6 inches tall and flowered off?
Yeah, I don't know how many people have actually grown 12 footers on this panel. Raise your hand.
Well, I will say this, Sam, yes and no. I have noticed that in certain cultivars in like Europe and North America. However, I've seen quite the opposite on cultivars like the Mullumbimby Madness, grown in Australia, grown 12 to 18 feet, 12 feet tall and 18 feet wide from the Mullen Madman. And all the best heads were in the 25 to 45 micron range, which was just
equatorial sun.
Yeah, I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was just like it went
but
against everything I knew.
all I'm really saying, Marcus, is that if they grow that same plant 6 inches tall, the resin heads will be a little bit smaller than if they grow it 12 feet. That's all I'm saying.
And you've noticed that.
With that, because when we were doing huge plants up at the hideout, my upper bag pulled like the 150s and stuff. I had really never pulled a 150 bag that had hash in it until we got up there, and it was the majority of my hash was 150 and 120. Always while I was up there growing those huge plants.
Well, when I first went to visit Breeder Steve in Lugano around 2000, 2001, and I made hash with his material, they weren't 12 foot tall, but they were pretty big plants that he was growing in his hoop houses. Some of them were definitely like 7 and 8 feet. Those plants, I produced melt from the 190 bag all the way to the 25 micron bag. Every single grade melted into a liquid. And I photographed it while it was wet. They were all wet on a piece of paper, and I kind of wrote each micron. And that photo was published in Red Eye magazine in 2002, I believe. So that blew my mind. I've seen it since, but not a lot. That's another, thing that I like. How do we grow cultivars? Because look, we're all looking for the melt. Well, sometimes we can grow melt between the 90 and the 120, but we don't see it above the 120, and we don't see it maybe below the 73. Big yields come in on those 45 micron bags, and it always has that very oily, very specific taste. Like a 45 micron, I swear I could pick out on, and I've done it like many, many times, from any cultivar made by any hash maker. You put them in front of me, the 45 is just so specific. And if you ever, back in the day when we were puffing with a flame or a lighter, just gently swafting, what I noticed about the 45 is that it would take flame. It would light on fire when you were smoking a bowl of it. I haven't smoked any hash in a long time. I don't think we've been puffing too many bowls even. I saw Ganja Gill puffing bowls. Maybe I'll join the panel and puff some bowls. We're going to introduce
fat spliff that kind of got me, my hands shaking a little.
Nice. Well, we're going to introduce A. Simpson is in the house. He's next up to give us a little background on who he is and what he's been doing with Bubble Hash.
Howdy, y'all. Can you hear me?
Welcome, dude. We can hear you perfect.
Right on. Awesome. There was so much talked about. I wanted to jump in, but I didn't want to be rude. So my name's Adam. I'm just a hash maker. I'm stoked to be on here. Let's get weird with some hash talk. I'm in Arcata, California. I should probably shout out the gardener that I work with, In Her Nature on Instagram. That's in.her.nature. And so you were talking about it earlier. It's always good to give the gardener the credit that they so deserve. I have so much to talk about. What do you want to talk about? Let's do it.
just tell us kind of how you got into it, what your techniques are, what you're kind of doing, just a little kind of bio on you, and yeah, but from there, what we're going to do is we've got so many good points that everyone's brought up. From like, I want to talk about pre-washing material. I want to talk about drying, desiccants versus freeze dryers. We're going to get into it deep, but just give a little bio. We've still got Bobby and Gil and Rackham's to go through. It's almost 10 o'clock. We probably got till 10:30, 11 before I switch it over into the rosin talk. So yeah, just a little introduction, bro, is good.
Well, I mean, first of all, like back in 2009-ish, probably was the first time I ever made hash, 2008, 2009-ish. And to be on a panel with a bunch of folks and that I can learn from so easily is amazing. I don't know, but I'll always give rosin makers shit, even though I love rosin. But I think that I should bring that up. Like, a lot of people haven't experienced the days of buying moldy hash in stores, or just having really, really wet hash and not knowing why or how to dry it properly. And I don't know.
I take full responsibility, because when I first started making water hash, bubble hash, I was like taking wet bubble and like rolling it into these Frenchy cannoli balls, and people loved it. They loved it. It was like shimmering, beautiful, but I was doing it all wet. I only did it for a couple years before I realized the massive mistake that I had made. And I feel like I spent the next 10 to 15 years trying to tell people not to do that, and seeing so much beautiful hash. It was such a shame to see someone who had great herb, who ran it perfectly, and then took it and rolled it up all wet. And of course, we're going to get into the importance of breaking water hash up, whether you're sieving it or whether you're microplaning it or whether you're freeze drying it. You need to get the moisture out of your hash. This is fairly important. And of course, if you're doing fresh frozen, there is a moisture percentage that holds in the wax membrane. And if you're a macro photographer, you understand that, because those balls, those glands look so beautiful, like a water balloon stretched to its maximum when it's fresh. And when it's dry, they tend to dry out and create ripples like a raisin. And so these are the sort of differences, dry. That's why they say dry sifting is not a misnomer. It's ideal to have your material dry. Sure, you can do it with fresh frozen and some sort of like dry ice material. But to me, that is like the way to produce the most contaminated low grade hash that you could possibly make. I think a lot of people don't realize that the water is very important in water hash. And as water hash makers, it's really one of the things that make us look like we're doing a really great job, because of that purity, 99.9%. If you think it's easy, try to do it without the water. It's there's a very few percentage of people who can really, in the numbers, in the amounts, still produce that kind of product. So why don't we introduce Damn It Bobby into the room. He's on mute right now. He'll share a little bit with us, and then we'll go through Ganja Gil and Rackham, and then we'll just have a nice little maybe a 45-minute to an hour long conversation about all these little points that different people made up. So try not to lose your point. If you've heard someone say something, sometimes it's a good idea to write a little note. But go ahead, Bobby.
Can we just jump in if for some reason it feels like talking?
Yeah, once Gil and Rackham and Bobby have introduced themselves, it's going to be a free-for-all jump-in conversation. So we'll just get these three introduced. Go ahead, Bobby.
I've got a couple seconds left here before I take a dab. Give me a moment.
Well, I guess we all better take a dab then. As my good brethren D420K would say, bong rip, mother lovers.
Bobby just straight telling us to hang on, guys. I got to take a dab.
Gangster. Straight. He's like, sorry, guys. I only have a couple more seconds.
You.
Woo! I'm hitting the strawberry banana. From Concentrated X in the house. Give thanks, brother, for producing the fire all day long on those strawberry banana. So good. Is right.
My name is Chris. I go by Damn It Bobby on Instagram. I'm a hash maker originally from Texas. I live in Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington area now. Originally started making hash in Battleground, Washington for a little company in 502 here, and then switched to working for Archive down in Portland, Oregon, and selling all of our stuff through the dispensary there at Archive. So everything is hand stirred. It's all single source. We use all RO water there, all RO ice. It's a cold environment that we're working in there. I run ice extract bags, so bag stack everything from 45 to 220 in there, the 70, the 90, the 120, everything to isolate. And then we mix back for rosin grades if we need to, and separate everything for full melt to do full melt drops here, along the road.
That's what's up. You mentioned that in the chat the other day. Definitely in a very good position if you are washing for Archive. A good friend of mine, Fletch, he's been doing this a long time. He really knows how to grow, and he really knows how to find those phenos. Everything he grows is just fucking fire.
I should mention I wash at Burnside Collective Garden in Portland, Oregon. So that's the farm where it all goes down, and then all the material, the flour, the hash, the seeds, everything gets sold at Archive in Portland, the dispensary. And Fletcher is, he's a big part of everything. He's done tons of breeding. The lemon peel, you said to talk about strains that you really like to wash. That's one I've been posting a lot lately is his lemon peel. It washes extremely well. You don't really ever find that terpene profile that washes really well. It does, 5%, and 3.5 of that sits in the 90 through 119. So you're collecting a lot of full melt when you wash that one. It was 20,000 and some change, like 20,085 grams, hand stirred between a few buckets. And the thing dumped, 590 trays for us. And, everything else.
So you're looking at about an 18% yield on that material. What is that? 5% fresh frozen?
Yeah, it's close to 18 to 20 there. It always depends. This is the second time I've run this material here. And of course, the material tends to get better and better every time as you try and get better when you grow the resin.
So I'm sure people know, but for those that don't, because it might be a place where you get confused, fresh frozen weighs about 1/4 to 1/5 of the same material dry. There are cultivars that tend to go towards the 1/5, and there are cultivars that tend to go to the 1/4. Would that be accurate for you, Sam, that you've seen over the years, a 1/4 to 1/5 of weight?
I have to turn my mute on. I'm not sure what exactly you're asking me.
Well, I'm just saying, like, from a hash making perspective, if we take 1,000 grams of fresh frozen, it's going to be between 200 and 250 grams dried.
For sure.
I do. I don't have a lot of experience making fresh frozen because the resin that I like the best is actually dried for a couple of weeks, cured for a couple of months, and then I would stick it in a walk-in freezer and use a centrifugal brush machine on it to make traditional dry set. So I didn't really have fresh plants that were frozen, and I don't think I really have the experience to say it.
Right. Well, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it. All the other hash makers were going like this, so I know I'm on point for that. So and that's what he was saying. 5% fresh frozen. You're going to end up multiplying that by about 4, maybe a little bit less.
With our fresh frozen material, we take a lot of time to buck the material down, without touching the material, and putting it into very small freezer bags and freezing, tons of these little freezer bags to make sure that there's no pressure on the material at all, that, that it's sitting there with as little pressure at all, to keep the heads intact. So whenever we do go to wash them, you don't pull out one huge freezer bag full of material that's got a ton of weight. You're offloading a bunch of really small bags that have between 500 and maybe 1,000 grams in them.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I've been trying to figure out getting the Dank Duchess in here. I think she's trying to connect now. She's in two. I know I can fit like 40 people in here at a time. It's just kind of a new one that I haven't done a ton of churches with, so I'm not the best at doing troubleshooting, especially while I'm trying to moderate the church. But hopefully she'll make it in on her audio at least, and we'll move forward from down. Oh, there she is. Good, you made it. Man, she'd been trying for an hour. 1 hour she's been trying to get into the room. So welcome, Duchess. Dank Duchess in the house. We've just got 2 more people to introduce. So your timing is actually spectacular, because we have Ganja Gill left and we have Rackham's left, and then we're going to get into a nice hash conversation, which will sort of leach into our rosin conversation here in the next couple of hours. So Duchess in the house. What's that?
No, I'm sorry. That was me doing some other ditzy shit.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Well, we're going to introduce Ganja Gill. He's going to give us a little lowdown on where he's at and what he's been doing. So give it a go, bro. Oh, we got you muted. There you go.
Cool. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Josh and Kelly from Dragonfly were letting me know I was glitching out a little bit, so I tried to move closer to my router. So hopefully this is smooth. But
yeah. And is your router in the forest? Is that where your router is?
Yeah, man.
Word.
Like totally satellite router, Trinity County style. You know how it goes.
Yeah, that's what's up. But, well, good. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Good morning to everybody, the whole panel, and all the listeners. Feel super blessed to be with y'all right now. And yeah, just my journey is kind of a spiritual journey. Once I met Ganja, I was captivated by it, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And I've just followed it everywhere it's led me, to the ends of the earth, the other side of the country, whatever it took, that's what I did. I followed it blindly. I like to consider myself a ganja shepherd, taking care of the plant for the people. It's a deeper meaning for me personally, and when all the licensing and all the permitting went on, I'm in the Emerald Triangle, I should say that. I'm up in Humboldt County, Trinity County area. It's ganja country up here, The baker, the candlestick maker, their mothers, their grandmothers, their children, everyone is involved in ganja here. And when the licensing and the permitting came, it really rocked the culture. It was kind of devastating for most. And I was always a small time guy doing my small time thing, but I was just watching my community kind of fall apart and go to shambles, and watching people put all their money on the line and, go all in. And it was kind of troubling times. And I kind of asked Ganja, like, what do I do? What do I want out of it? And it just told me to focus on myself, as I always had, and kind of just do my own thing. That's always what's been meaningful for me personally. So that's what led me to living soil and cultivating outside, and all this awesome connections I made. I stopped growing indoors for personal reasons, not knocking the indoor grower. Some of my best friends are indoor growers. But for me personally, I got into resin farming, which led to sun-grown cannabis, which led to living soil. The idea of bringing dirt from outside into your indoor grow was like always oxymoronic to me. It's like we always tried to keep everything so clean and so sterile in an indoor environment. So it just didn't make sense to me. I was reading all Teeming with Microbes and all those books, and I was like, I just need to be outside. I need to be growing outside. So I got a little spot, started building soil, started going out into the national forest and grabbing stuff that was there for me. So that was a big issue as well, is just keeping the overall cost down. My time to me is just my time. So if it doesn't cost me anything to cultivate cannabis, then I don't feel like you could ever lose. There's just so much to be gained. It's always worth the gamble. So I got really into living soil and found the teachings of Elaine, Dr. Elaine Ingham, and kind of got into the microscope thing for a little bit. It's really not my thing, but it was just cool to kind of learn it and have it as a tool. And then I kind of found Josh and Kelly from Dragonfly Earth Medicine. Shout out to them. So much love for them.
Big time.
Deep love and gratitude. Yeah, deep love and gratitude for them. I really do consider them family. And, I just kind of met them right at a really good pivotal point. And everything just started to kind of line up. And then I kind of asked the universe for more. I was like, I just want to keep doing my ganja thing. And I want it to be enough for me. What do I do? And I don't know, everyone was buying freeze dryers and I was never into the BHO. Everyone was doing that up here, and it just never really like interested me personally. So thankfully, I never went down that route. But I got a freeze dryer and got back into hash making. You know, I no longer had to microplane and air dry, so I could step up production. And it just went really, really well. You know, I was washing really great resin strains that under the full sun, in living soil that I've been building for over 6 years. And my yields were great. The terps were great. It was just super fulfilling. You know, it really, truly was. Like, I was able to do it all myself completely, from seed to harvest to processing. I do it all entirely myself, packaging, all of it. I stuff my freezers myself. I wash it all myself, press it all myself. I do it all because, to me, I really, truly love the process, every step of it. I often think about hiring help. I need help. My back is broken. But then I often go back to, I only grow so much. And every barrel that I let someone else wash is one less barrel that I can wash. And I really, truly just cherish the time that I get to spend with cannabis. Every moment of it teaches me so much about myself, teaches me a lot about, makes sense out of life for me personally. You know, the world's a crazy place. It's scary once you leave your house, you leave your property, you go out there, you know, it's tough. It's tough on a person like me. So being able to stay home in my ganja sanctuary with my lady and just work with the plant and spend intimate time with the plant, it's beyond valuable to me. It's just like, it's priceless. And to me, this way of life, sadly, is kind of ending. And maybe we will be the last generation, you know, and I'm clinging to that personally. I'm holding on to that shit for dear life. I'm not trying to let go.
Bro, you're making me want to move back to the hill really bad right now. Seriously.
I love the passion.
Kirk.
I love the passion, man. I love the passion and the honesty and the truth in your voice. For me, cannabis is also a guiding light. I almost feel like it's been my shepherd, you know, leading me for the last 25 to 30 years. And what a beautiful thing to be a part of the last 23 years now of just sharing how to make hash with people. My favorite thing back in the day was to travel anywhere and everywhere and show people this hash making and watch for their eyebrows. Because when I lifted that 73 bag, the eyebrows always went up. I called it the eyebrow raise. It's like, here comes the 73 bag. This was during a time where no one had seen this and no one understood this. This was like 1999, you know, where it was so new and such an amazing thing to be a part of. And I definitely am very happy for the people that came before me that got me to be able to be in the place that I was at the time that I was, to sort of just be able to be, you know, one of the steps in the ladder of this incredible hash journey. I'll tell you something, dude, and I'll let you know, when we did a Legends of Hash years ago, we celebrated the legend. When we do a Legends of Hash, you have to understand, Sam and I, when we started these parties, it wasn't to celebrate ourselves. We don't see ourselves as legends. Obviously, Sam's a legend, but that's a different story. We were celebrating true legends. So one year we celebrated the Garden of Kafur. And in the Garden of Kafur, man, that was the spot. Let me see if I have it here. I think I do. No, that was the Figure of Fun. Let's see what we got here. Is this Garden of Kafur? Here we go. Look at that. Just happened to have it right here. And I did not organize that. This is literally just sitting in the left drawer of my office. And so we celebrated the Garden of Kafur. In the 12th century Cairo, the favorite meeting place for hashish connoisseurs was the legendary Gardens of Kafur. Islamic law forbade the drinking of wine, but many Muslims, especially the Sufis, were great proponents of hashish eating, and its legality was hotly debated by Islamic courts. By the 14th century, conservative Muslim leaders won out and came down hard by destroying Kafur's gardens, burning surrounding hash fields, and starving out the farmers. Shops and cafes selling hashish were closed, and the owners hunted down and killed. But hashish use continued. Hope I see a smile on your face there, Gil. Hashish use continued. In 1378, the frustrated Cairo government forced all known hashish users into the main square, where soldiers wrenched out their teeth with pliers. A decade later, hashish eating still thrived in Egypt, as it had become too much a part of the Arab way of life to be forsaken. May the gardens of Kafur serve as an ancient reminder that cannabis prohibition will never succeed. We're not going anywhere, Gil. Trust me.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's going to manifest and change and alter. And as long as you're in your little spot, you know, steering your vehicle, it's not going to change. We're in charge of this, okay? Not them. We have been for a long time, since before the Gardens of Kafur. And when they're killing us and they're wrenching out our teeth and we're still here, that says a lot to me. So,
no, agreed, man. Agreed. The plant creates so much passion, you know what I mean? It just like, I don't know, it just exudes it, you know? I just feel like there's fortunately really great people surrounding it. And it's just weird times right now where Babylon's got its grips on it. So there's some things going down, but like you said, you just got to persevere, hold on to it. And, you know, not much has changed, man. My life's only gotten better. I tell everyone that, man. Every year is my best year, including this year, you know, every year. And, you know, you just love ganja. She'll love you back, man.
It's okay for it to change and alter how it looks. You know, we just have to make sure we don't fall for the illusion. Because from my perspective, you know, I'm never going to fight against access. And there's all this access that's now coming into play that a lot of us aren't really overly stoked on. But then I know people that are. So it's like we continue with our civil disobedience. We continue to push the envelope and get exactly what we want and how we want it. And we do that by growing great cannabis, by learning about biodynamic, organic, you know, regenerative, sustainable growing, by learning about, you know, these different solventless techniques for extracting the resins and creating these wonderfully pure products. And if we just keep doing that, it's it'll work itself out. It's you know, it really will.
Unfortunately, in California, legalization has cut off access, though, to a large number of people. Unfortunately.
Well, that's why the civil disobedience will be required there.
And right now, it's civil disobedience again. Is exactly right.
Yeah, that's how we got what we wanted.
I'll toot my horn right now and say I kind of gave them the finger, handed the permit back, and we're just still rocking it out the way we have in the past. Civil disobedience style, man.
Wonderful. I tell big companies all the time, you know, don't harsh out on civil disobedience. It's literally what made it possible for you to be in business right now. So, you know, support those grassroots. You know, don't be annoyed when you see someone like, well, why is that guy doing it illegally if I have to get a license? It's like, well, that guy's an OG frontliner who's continuing to make things better for your future licenses. And seeing as you don't want to do it because you want to protect everything you have over here, you should just shut your face and maybe give them a little support. That's the way I see it anyway.
One good thing in California is that you can grow 6 plants. Everybody can. That's one good. It's a small thing.
You can grow more than that. You can grow way more than that.
It's too bad more people aren't embracing that 6 plant thing. Honestly, I thought I would see more people doing their 6 plants and listen,
growing cannabis, it takes a lot of work and it's not easy. And if it was so easy, you'd see everyone growing all their food too and making all their clothes. And it's like, listen,
or all their beer or all their wine.
Yeah, it's an endless amount of things. With cannabis, it's kind of, we've always gotten lost in, because there is this very spiritual connection to it. You know, I agreed with everything Gil said earlier and felt very much the same way about cannabis. I have a very strong connection to it. Yet at the same time, you know, I always hear people, well, Johnny B, he's a proponent of getting everyone to grow. I'm like, John, you understand that not everyone can grow. Like, it's not possible. Like, I know that I can't grow right now because the way I'm busy and work and travel, I end up starting my garden. I get it up to veg. I flip the lights and then I'm like, bye, sweetie. I have to go on a 10-day trip. And now for 10 days, my poor wife, who has 3 children and runs an entire household, is like watering these plants that are taking more and more and more, like every single day as they fatten up and flower out. So I don't have the time to do it personally as I do what I'm doing. I know a lot of people who are sick and who are unable to physically, take care of a garden. I love the fact that we can grow plants in Canada, and everyone that can absolutely should. On the flip side of that, we need to have access available to people through shops and dispensaries and online, where they can also access it from there. And pretty much that's what we have right now.
Shame on you that you're not using more automation. You should be able to do this over your freaking smartphone from wherever you are in the world.
What's that? Buy cannabis?
No, water your plants.
Oh, water your plants.
Change the lights, whatever you need to do. I mean, I had an acre greenhouse. It was totally automated, watering, everything.
Yeah, well, you're Skunk Man Sam, and I'm just the lowly bubble man. Don't shame me, Hash Church Sam.
You're smart enough to do that if you wanted to.
Well, listen, I'm even smarter, because what my plan is to buy a 60-foot greenhouse, put it on the rock behind my house, get some agricultural students from the University of British Columbia or wherever, and just bring them down to be like, look, I want half of it food. I want it all living soils and organics. I want half of it herb. Here's the cultivars that I want, and kind of let them have fun and do that while I do all of the other stuff that I'm doing. Because let me tell you, I am busy.
That sounds like automation.
Well, that's my automation. Exactly. I like people automation. I like people. A, it's giving them an opportunity, and B, it's giving me an opportunity as well. How fun would it be to be in a greenhouse full of plants right now for Hash Church right behind my house? Like that. I have a 99 plant license, federal. I have a federal 99 plant license that I can grow 99 plants on my property. I can possess on my property 10 pounds of extracts. I'm allowed to have 10 pounds of extracts at my house, which is like, I'll tell you, sometimes I need a little bit more, so it's a bit rough. I'm joking, obviously. Who the fuck needs 10 pounds of extract at their house? That's ridiculous, unless you're like the Harborside dispensary or something. You don't need 10 pounds of full melt bubble hash at your house. But listen, we're going to continue on. We're going to introduce Rackums, and then we're going to introduce the Dank Duchess. So Rackums, what's up, buddy?
Oh, shit. How's everybody doing?
Doing good, man. We're doing good. How are you doing?
Great. It's kind of hard to follow Ganja Gill's backstory, but nonetheless, my name is Rackums, Nick for short. I'm from the Northern California area, Sierra Mountains, originally from the Bay Area, but now I reside in the Sierra Mountains, or Sierra Foothills, alongside True Hash. But yeah, Rackums started about 2.5, 3 years ago. And it won't go into a long, deep story. Essentially, it started, for lack of better words, as an ode to my wife's father, who recently passed away in Indonesia for hashish and Thai stick. He was in prison there for 18 plus years. Didn't get to see the light of day, essentially. But yeah, been not really a grower. I am, my fiance or wife is a grower. She's been growing for 10 plus years. We do have single source. But right now, I'm working with clients such as Ridge Boys and the Real Ridge Boys, and doing my best to isolate as much 6-star as possible, if not the best quality that I could possibly come by, with whether it's a single source or an outside source, and either make that into the best rosin I can and/or the best hash that I can produce. That's pretty much about it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for confirming. Thank you for confirming what I just said to Ganja Gill. So 18 years, never saw the light of day, died in prison. You guys did not turn your backs on cannabis. You embraced cannabis, and as an ode to him, started the Rackums account.
Yep.
So that's amazing, dude. That's literally exactly what I was reading in the Gardens of Kafur. They can rip out our teeth and they can kill us, but they're not going to stop us. You know, hash making used to be these big countries that were like a mighty oak tree, but now hash makers are blades of grass everywhere, covering the earth. And good luck mowing us all down.
Definitely.
All right, cool. Well, we'll finish off with Dank Duchess, and then we'll get into a little conversation. She can give us a little introduction. I'm not sure if she's actually frozen now, if that was some bad timing, but are you there, Duchess? Oh my goodness. Imagine if she got bumped. I feel so bad for her. She tried for an hour to get in here, so she just got bumped. I guess we'll have to come back. You are on mute, so maybe try to unmute that. Oh, she said her phone died. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All right. Well,
gotta get that shit plugged in.
You know what? When she gets in here, we'll let her introduce herself. And in the meantime, I wanted to start talking about, one of the good things of as a hash maker. If you're looking to really for that cleanliness is godliness, if you're looking for that chef SOP, when you get your material, get to know it, dump it out, look at it, filter through it, see what you've got that you're working through rather than just through the bag. And if it's coming from an outdoor grow, it's never a bad idea. Even some of the greenhouses to pre-wash your material, which is really, I do it in not a very, very cold water. I do it in a sort of room temperature water. I'll put material in, I'll have my rubber gloves on, and I'll gently just sort of massage the material, releasing large little dusty stones and little mini pebbles. You'd be amazed at what can get stuck on the plant from an outdoor grow, giving it that little pre-wash, filtering out that heavy sediment that will just contaminate your hash and look like little black dots in your hash if you get the microscope out afterwards. So are you guys doing that on the regular when you see material come in that seems dirty and dusty? Are you guys pre-wash?
You don't really pre-wash fresh frozen. It doesn't really work what I've tried, but when I was up at the Mendo Hideout, we were doing 10,000 square feet. We've experimented with the pre-wash right at harvest, pre-wash, let it hang, drip dry, and then into the freezers, and that actually worked pretty well. I can't really say I did enough experimenting with it to say we got much or lost any yield or anything like that, but it was an interesting thing. The hash was still good. It was clean.
We pre-wash all our material when we're harvesting it, and then shake it off and drip dry it and in the drying room,
and then air dry it.
You're right.
I just wanted to say that if it's fresh material, you're going to have a really hard time knowing the quality of that material after it's frozen, so be there prepping, try to be able to prep that material for the gardener, or work out something, because that's not, want to know what's in the freezer before it's all frozen together.
That's for sure.
And I definitely love the idea of, and we do it every time, of like very carefully observing all the material. And actually this year we've been breaking the material right down into the bags. But yeah, like you said, pretty much looking at every flour, piece of flour that goes in there before it goes in the bag.
Yeah, I like to look at the material with a jeweler's loop first. If I'm like actually gonna wash other people's material, be on site, see it, look at with like a 30x or 15x, see what's really there, see the size, the shape, how dense.
Back in the day in Vancouver, it was so bad, living in the Pacific Northwest and people thinking they can grow Afghanis up here, and they attract powdery mildew like you can't possibly imagine, unless you live in the Pacific Northwest, and then you know exactly how they attract powdery mildew. But back in the day, when I first started making bubble, someone gave me the most beautiful material, and I ran it through my bags, and the hash was just like white, and it was like full melt 6-star. And I took a small dab of it, and it was just sulfur, like heads of matches. And that's when I learned. That's when I learned about Defender and all of these sulfur burner products and how badly they contaminate glandular trichomes. And then, of course, people would say things to me like, "Oh, well, we only do that in veg. It doesn't happen in flower." And then I'm like, "Yeah, but you understand, like glandular trichomes are present on the plant from the time the first 2 true leaves come out of the seedling, which is called the epicotyl, comes in after the cotyledon, which are those 2 round leaves." The first 2 true leaves, the epicotyl, if you photograph the leaves, they're covered in bulbous trichomes from like 1 day, 2 days old type of thing. So when you hear someone say, "I only spray in veg," wow, you can just flush the toilet on that right away. I used to take.
I was just gonna.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Go on, Marcus.
I was just going to say what I would do is I'd grab the material a pinch out of the bag, and I would light it with a lighter. and then I would hold it under my nose with my eyes closed. And even if it had the lightest amount of sulfur on that material, that's how I would discover it right away. And that kept me from ruining a set of bubble bags, because I'm telling you, sulfur is like the worst. You can't get it out of the oil. You can't get it out of the hash. I'll never forget, almost over 20 years ago, standing on my deck, which is 2 doors down from the property I live on now, and hucking 29 grams of that white full melt hash, like right into the bush. I just couldn't deal with it. People were like, oh, you could have eaten it. I was like, listen, that hash was an abomination and it needed to go.
It comes through in the edible too. We've
That's what I was going to say.
That the hash was all sulfury, and we were like, shit, maybe we can make some cake pops or something with it.
You know what you can make? You can make a disc to throw. That's what you can make.
That's about it. We actually, I mean, I've seen like a couple kilos thrown away from people spraying sulfur too late. It definitely, can murder you.
Sulfur weed is actually devil weed.
I can't handle it at all. And it was the worst thing back in the day. And it was a big thing that people saw a lot. And bubble bags really affected that whole use of those. Oh, wow. Look at that. Rack 'em. Go rack 'em with some Sieve Tech. I'm just going to mute you while you do that, because that's loud as fuck in my ears. What was I saying?
My bad.
Oh, don't worry about it, dude, at all. I love the fact that you're processing hash and getting ready to make rosin. So smash extract. Sulfur is such trash. I've seen so much hash ruined. It's just unfortunate, but it did affect the growers, because back in the day, I was able to go to the BC Compassion Club and explain to them, this, and this actually has sulfur on it. And that's by teaching them that small trick, grabbing a little bud, lighting it on fire, holding it under your nose. Even the people who were doing quality control for the BC Compassion Club back in the day had no idea and were unwittingly buying this material that had sulfur on it. So it goes back to it goes back to show you that people are people, and you don't have to be a big company to be a douchebag. Very, very like small micro grow, like let's just grow a batch and make some hash, can also be shitty. And I've seen it even in amazing places like Jamaica, where the growers are, these conscious Rastafarian guys. And it's like, well, guess what? When it comes between you not being able to feed your family or have any money for the next 3 months versus I'm just going to pour some poisonous fungicides that are illegal in other countries on this material so I can at least crop out, you wouldn't believe how many people choose the latter. And you don't have to be a big evil corporation to do that. A very small farmers, small hash makers have been known to do it as well. So for me, I say we get rid of the trust in our industry and we move into full testing for everything. And I would love to see it also affect, a lot of people want cannabis to be less regulated. I do in aspects of it, but the regulations of spraying chemicals and poisons and deadly toxins on the plant, I love those regulations being high. I love things being in place where that can be found and those people who perpetrate that can be caught. And I also love the idea of that system having an influence on our food, water, and air systems that are currently completely have been, exposed to a vast varieties of toxins and poisons and whatnot. It wouldn't be a bad thing if our food kind of picked up a little bit from the cannabis industry and maybe tested things a little more. And maybe when something's organic and naturally grown, we just call that food. And when something's been grown with deadly chemicals, instead of the word organic, let's make them have a fucking word like Chemex food or whatever. Yeah, this is Chemex. If you want some Chemex tomatoes, by all means, they're 3 cents a pound. Buy as many as you like. That's my opinion anyway.
I agree. That's a good time to break into some of the strain stuff, or in terms of specific strains, into like living in Maine, coming back out of 11 years in from Trinity to Southern Humboldt, all around in the Emerald. I definitely brought my breeding with me out there and then back home to Maine. So what I noticed is in many places in Northern California, you can grow just about anything other than the polar opposites of maybe a hard indica, hard sativa. Back into Maine, I really enjoy sun growing. I'm growing in, greenhouse, automated light dep, indoor as well, all live in soil organic. But I know that Maine has really high humidity problem, and each season is different. You get beautiful sun depending on location, and the water's pristine, which is another thing. Coming from a beautiful water place, to move back for the plentiful water was amazing. But then I'm battling with high humidity, certain grow seasons being better than others, and definitely have a lock on some strains that have done well outside that are specific to the region more.
How early are you guys having to finish out there in Maine?
Oh man, I have on my Instagram, I actually have a Pineapple Fields from Dynasty Genetics that rode till October 30th, right on pre-Halloween cut this year.
I mean,
so depending, I mean, we had a later season this last one, but the one before was an early cut. It was like really kind of harsh into October. After October 1st, it was pretty rough. You needed to be in a house. It was not, the outside potential is kind of gone. You'd had to have early strains. Sour Banana Sherbet, I got a pheno that just cranks off super early, like 3rd week September outside. It's not my favorite strain, but it's beautiful, beautiful work in terms of it's loud, bright, comes off well. I've got a few types locked in on, but it's really taken a lot of work to cycle through plants that don't do well, don't finish well, that are susceptible early to the mildew, that test bad for botrytis. So working through a lot of populations of plants with just very few keepers, like under 3-4 types for the outside in the Maine that I keep on. And then obviously indoor, I got a whole bunch of them. So.
Yeah, I could only imagine being from Wisconsin. I never successfully pulled off a harvest outside. So
I had a guy working for me first year back in helping me that was from Wisconsin actually, and he was amazed with how well it went into Maine actually. But it is site dependent. There's micro climates per site. I'm in the foothills at like 625 feet. So I'm not too low, not too high up, and in a beautiful area, just full sun all day, beautiful water. So it's site dependent in Maine. It's not everywhere grows great cannabis, but I have a list. I guess maybe just share real quick and then shut up about my list of strains that make the best hash if you want to hear it.
We definitely want to hear it. Let's go through our list, starting with Best Friend Farms.
All right. Well, first off, I thought about it. I love my own strains, but there's East Coast Sour Diesel to that original cut headband that we call Diesel Band. And it's popping off grease. Just, you can't even touch it. The stuff melts. The rind turns to just terpene resin sauce by the end of even like a couple months. I have a ball that's like 5-6 months old and it's just completely blob, like moose poop in a jar, and it's like.
Is there a particular method that variety is best for? I mean, is it dry sit, water hash, rosin?
Okay, yeah, that was from cured resin, cured flower from sun grown on this run of that particular ball. And no matter indoor or out, it just seems to throw a terpene profile percentage and a reaction of terpene to the resin. Like some strains do, they just, like for a classic hash temple ball style, it breaks the rind right down. And it just turns to blob, whereas other strains will trap what I would call like the cream. I don't know how you'd phrase it, but the creamy innards within the rind and really form a sealed rind. The Diesel Band just completely breaks it down. And I remember from back early days of the real East Coast Sour Diesel cut that was doing the same thing too. So I think it's coming from that.
I've noticed the same thing with sour diesels, that it'll butter a lot easier as well.
Okay.
That's some sour diesel right there behind me. That's from Fresh Frozen. But yeah, it's definitely, I feel like those OG kind of terpenes will butter a lot easier, quicker. I don't know. Does anybody else have that same kind of?
I noticed it all the time.
Yeah.
I run another one I call Gas Mask. It's a headband by Kosher Kush Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not Mac 1. It was a Mac male tie-in, but it was to a great cut of kosher. And then of course the original headband cut, and that one's just amazing. Does the same thing. Most of the strains I'm liking to run for my style of hash, classic hash, temple balling or pressing, I'm finding to be what would be called maybe gassier strains. These days. I got a Kosher Mac. What is it? A Kosher Mac tray along with that Kosher Mac headband that are my top 3 with the Diesel Band, but underneath Diesel Band. And then to end it, I go 24 karat gold from DNA. Does amazing work. It's one of my favorites to smoke. That Kosher Tangy. Can't say enough.
Favorite over here.
What's that?
24K is my all-time favorite over here. I have a pheno that dumps. And
gas fruit, it dumps down.
Yeah,
I wanted that.
Orange is pretty played out, but when people get their hands on this one, they're back into the orange.
Yeah, we got our second pheno of that one running right now. It's on fire. It takes the Kush pheno lean and the growth, but the flower is just, people kind of hear it and go, oh, Tangie played out a little bit, or kosher. It's not like that. It stays right in my jar on the table with the headband, diesel band type thing. And then Traystar from Top Dog Seeds actually turns out some like really fiery Afghan 1 to their Traystar dog or Star Dog work. And I'm just getting some old, like greasy type looking quality hash that, to throw it back. I grew up with, Moroccan Super Keef and Nepalese Temple Ball, honestly, as being my favorites to throw back to. So that's where I'm kind of looking for those resins that will form for me like that. But
I wanted to ask, can you force flower plants out with the sun in Maine?
Or light dep?
Can you do light dep?
Light dep's my spine. That's my backbone. I was trained from 6 or 7, honestly, in Northern California, and I just stuck to it. Someone threw me in the mix, said, there you go. And I kind of went, whoa. And honestly, it turned out, a really big turn of really, really good forced flower. And I stick to the light dep all the time.
I guess my another question would be, you're using lights in there too, right?
I'm not supplementing myself.
Okay, so no lights in that. Just a black tar tricking.
I just manipulate light structure, which I think for like Maine or even into Canada is can be crucial, in terms of getting the potential out of your grow season and to grow types that wouldn't normally grow outside sun grown for my terps into Maine. I can pull almost anything, in the depth.
That's awesome.
We ran Weasel Skunk from Nature Farm this year. Original Diesel and Skunk 18. And so far I'm absolutely loving it. It's really, really greasy, but it's not like too hard to work with. And yeah, it's like,
I think it's that skunk grease, man. I mean, I think the diesel
into like a.
Sorry, it looks greasy.
No,
it looks like.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's just, and I agree like a lot, and also like the piney strains, I notice will be like really greasy too. We ran last year. We ran what was it? Scapegoat. Scapegoat Genetics, Dale Denton, and it's Nom Nom with
Pineapple
Pineapple Trainwreck, and that was phenomenal. That was one of our favorites last year, and it was that total grease too, that like apple jelly type. Yeah,
good relationship between the terpene profile and the resins. It's interesting to see how they react over time and curing and.
No doubt. Definitely. Yeah, because the GMO, one we really love for hashing, it's really like more savory terps, and it's definitely more stable. Like it does, if you give it some heat, it'll definitely grease up a bit.
Yeah.
But it not as much as others. It's more stable, and it'll stay stable in warmer temperatures more than other strains.
It's interesting. That's interesting. I know that Super Skunk seems to really pull through that diesel band, that mass Super Skunk, I believe, that's in that lineage. And got that extreme good, just skunky diesel taste, but also the terpene resin relationship there.
Awesome. Good that everyone's sharing. I could share.
Thanks for sharing.
Probably 100, but I'm not going to because that's ridiculous. Probably one of my all-time favorites from back in the day would be the Renee. And that was really the cultivar that started the, Bubble Bags as a company, because it was the first cultivar that I gained access to in large amounts that I was able to consistently make hash out of that would, come out white. And eventually when I would let it air dry and whatnot, it would turn like stained glass window, like in a church. You know, it would be these different like reds and oranges and ambers, and you could just like see through it. It was a little foggy, and that was full melt. Like it was that was 6-star hash. And one of the things I loved about it, I mean, one of the things I didn't love about it was the terpene profile. And I'm sure I got this wrong back in the day, what we really said, and we based this on the fact that the water didn't retain the smell when you ran Rene. Instead, the smell was retained in the resin. So I had assumed that somehow, you know, they were water soluble, the ones in the majority of cultivars, and that the alcohol soluble terpenes perhaps were not and did not wash out for whatever reason. I don't know if that's correct. I'm sure if Dr. Mark was here, he'd be like, actually, this is what's happening. But the bottom line is that, yeah, those resins, those terpenes, when you washed Rene, were so strong in the hash. It still smelled like a half pound of the bud. And in fact, the cultivar was nicknamed, this is a terrible nickname, pot to get you busted. It was pot to get you busted. I got so many friends kicked out of hotel rooms. My friend got arrested on a bicycle. He had a half pound of it in his backpack, riding his bike in downtown Vancouver, and some bike cops went by him and caught the whiff. This shit was dank. It was like, if you remember Hybe down in the Pacific Northwest, he did a strain years ago called the Dab, the dank ass bitch. And it had like the Emerald Triangle Funk and some other cultivar in it. Anyway, that was reminiscent of the Rene. The Rene had the funk, and the funk was like, you couldn't escape it. The smallest amount of it would reek up your house in a seriously heat score manner. Like I had a bud of it in my pocket one time, like 10 hours had gone by. I went Christmas shopping, did all this stuff, went through a roadblock. The cop was like, pull over there. The expert comes over, the RCMP, who says, I am an expert in marijuana grow ops. I've been in over 100. This is what he said to me. And I can tell you've just been in a marijuana grow op. And I said, listen, man, I'm going to be super honest with you, because I'm sure on your computer it shows that at a roadblock just like this, not too long ago, I got busted with 16.5 pounds of herb and about 6 grand cash. And I knew he had seen that. And I was so confident, and I had presents wrapped in the vehicle. I was so confident. I said, I promise you, I am not an idiot. There is no cannabis in my car whatsoever. And if you smell my pocket, I had a small bud in there about 10 hours ago, and he leaned in and smelled my pocket and completely believed me and let me drive away. And it was the truth. So that's my all-time favorite hash making cultivar. If you've got a cultivar where the smell does not stay in the water, you know, the more of those terpenes that can transpire into the hash, those are the cultivars that you want for producing full melt, because I'm quite certain it's the terpene profile that is most responsible for the melt aspect of the hash. So that's my 2 cents. This is when we start talking.
Could we talk about water for a second without going off all day on water? Because I know we could do that, but I just wanted to see if everybody really uses RO, and
yeah,
I also wanted to say it's not necessarily. I mean, for me at least, that's a lot of water. Like RO it's a lot of wasted water.
It's hella wasteful.
And you know, like if you have clean water, you got to set like a bunch of SED filters maybe, or carbon filter on, you know, like get some things going on where it depends on where you are too. I don't want to go off.
Depends on where you are, yeah.
Yeah, but
Gil can probably
distilled water.
A sediment filter right off the spring up on the hill is some of the best water you can use for making hash.
Yeah, sediment and dechlorinator. That's all I really use. I mean, I'm in Portland, so I'm fortunate to have fantastic water here. Just through that, it comes out at 0 ppm. So
yeah, we get 20 gallons per minute. We're doing 20 gallons per minute, 22 gallons a minute refreshal in Maine on my well. It's like a 350 foot, and it's well water, just pristine. Running through some testing and just light carbon filtration right now, but looking into even advanced filtration for the sediment and such. But, you know, it's not Babylon water supply. So it's not bleached in chloramide and chloramine and whatever else that you got to strip out, which I would do if I'm in that environment, you know.
Yeah, down here in Sebastopol, we have to run an RO. The water is horrible. But when I was living up in northern Mendo, up on the hill, man, we literally down a plastic tube from the spring box through a sediment filter. The shit was like 39 degrees coming off the hill. You know, we barely had to use any ice.
Nothing beats that. I had that for 6 years when I lived on the water. We pulled our water out of the creek that went right into the ocean. And it was just, you know, a nice little filtration system going down to like 0.05 micron or something. And we didn't have to dechlorinate or anything because it was just literally coming right off the mountain. It was great water. I've made hash with water all over the world. And obviously when you can control and condition and, you know, control all the parameters of your water, perhaps, you know, I think as hash makers that more people would do it and play around with it if they had access to really play around with the pH of their water and see how the resin reacts differently on the alkaline side versus the acidic side of your water. So yeah, having an RO unit is great, and having filters depending on where you're pulling your water from. Really, it's easy to find out what you need for your water filtration system. Go get your water tested. When you find out what's in it, you can then find out the methods of removing each of those things. And then those are the things that you require to clean your water and get it ready for nice water extraction.
I remember you making a big old ball of some really dank hash on a video from way back that with you, Marcus, that was actually in Jamaica in the back, you know, in the bush of Jamaica. I remember like big old barrels and then just coming out with this like grapefruit size swirly galax. Like that's motivation for me with those swirly balls that we're pulling and stuff, just seeing it done out there.
Dude, you want to hear motivation? We walked for an hour and a half with, I'm telling you, like, it had to be maybe 100 pounds of ice.
I wondered if you had a generator, like.
No, dude. This was in the bush. We had nothing. We walked for an hour and a half, and everyone took their turn carrying this fucking thing of ice on their head. It didn't matter who you were. Gypsy Nirvana definitely did it probably for the shortest amount of time. Wally, the Australian, Wally Duck, if you remember that guy, what an amazing character he was. It was nothing for him to work. And he was a kind of a little guy. It was nothing for him to work in like plus 35 degrees or whatever. Like it's 100 degrees in Jamaica, like in the shade.
Wow.
And so we're carrying this ice. I did it as well. It was pretty hardcore. And when we got there, I was like, so what should I mix with? And he just gave me like a fence post that he had like carved kind of like a handle into. And I was like, all right. So I straight like was doing this like with 20-gallon batches. They had a mountain of herb in that place. And the look on his face and how happy he was when I took his, you know, subpar sort of mid-grade Jamaican weed and turned it into a decent, for him. I mean, I didn't smoke it. I'll be honest.
No,
I went home and actually made my own, which was what that big ball that you saw was. I didn't make that at the place that looked like I went and doubled up and I was like, okay, now I got to go home and make good hash. So thanks for setting up that meeting, Gypsy.
Nice. Gypsy's a wonderful person. He's awesome.
Yeah. Good friend with him. Good times with Gypsy all over the world. We've had some adventures. So it's a good thing about cannabis. It really pulls you in these different directions. It can pull you, especially the hash, you know, like there's hash producing countries that every hash maker probably at one point in time may want to go check out.
I like the idea of
go ice and ice.
Yeah, ice. That's going to be my mess topic, ice.
All right. Well, we've got.
I like the idea.
Go ahead.
Before we talk about the ice, I like the idea of, and we're not doing this really on a full scale yet, but we'd like to, like actually like when you're done with the wash, saving that water in a reservoir and fermenting it and using that to feed back into the garden.
Makes for
because at least we do it on a seasonal scale. So we make hash in the winter, we grow plants in the summer type deal. So
Absolutely. Put anything you possibly can that came out of the garden back into the ground. Feed your soil, for sure.
And make sure your soil's clean, because hemp, cannabis, it's a phytoremediative plant. It will literally pull toxic heavy metals, etc., out of your soil if they're present. So test your water, test your soil. Those are great ways to open the door to, well, how am I going to know? How am I going to know what kind of filters I need? How am I going to know? Well, you'll know by testing your soil and testing your water. Pretty good spot to start if you want to start down the road as of a cannabis grower, which is definitely the best way if you can, because you really have to have full access and when someone else is growing your inputs, because they'll show you everything sometimes except maybe something that they shouldn't have been spraying or feeding the plant at one point in time in its life. And that's it's a tough one, because it's also connected to a way of life, and like you've built a family and you're taking care of this whole group of people and you have these dependents, and now your crop is about to die and you're in this position where it's like, holy shit, like we just need to squeeze another couple of weeks out of this. I get it, but it sucks. And it's especially sucks for people who are the ones that end up on the wrong end of that. I wish there was a better way. I wish that cannabis farmers could be insured. Like how great would that be? It's like not for stupidity, but like, legitimate, like you did everything right and something still kind of found its way and got in. It'd be nice if you could. Probably dreaming in a utopian world here. But hey, 25 years ago, I thought a utopian world would be being able to go to a store and buy legal hash and herb, right? That's what's up. All right, so we've got almost 11 a.m. What I have to figure out is, are we just going to continue on with this panel and finish off the day and do the rosin panel next week? Or are we going to end this panel and invite the rosin panel in at 11 o'clock? What do you guys feeling? Do you guys have a couple more?
How do you feel? I mean, we could probably keep talking. We could probably talk again, but you're the one that has to sit in here for
well,
a whole nother.
I'd like to be able to talk more about hash making for sure. This is Hash Church, and I'm sure the rosin folks would understand if we pushed the rosin episode till next Sunday, because we haven't
Definitely.
We haven't talked about it a lot. Even all of us haven't given our cultivars. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7, 8 cultivars that 3 or 4 of us have mentioned, but there's still quite a few people in the room who haven't mentioned their favorite cultivars. I know that'll be a part people like go back to and rewind and try to write those cultivars down, because that's we're basically giving you a full melt certification of cultivars. And along with that, we will also let you know how the cannabis was grown if we know that. So that might be helpful, because, maybe you're doing a hydro grow and this is only going to really do this particular way in dirt, or vice versa or something. So yeah, if anyone else wants to share some cultivars, I'm sure everyone listening. And we have, by the way, 864 people listening, which is the most we've had in a live audience in 2020. So that's really good. When Hash Church was at its peak, we would have about 1,000 people a week watching live. So great job, panel, for bringing in almost 900 people. Now, tell me your cultivars.
One of the cultivars I really enjoyed working with this year, I know Flynn and Resin Ranch work with it a lot as well, and it's been around for a while. It was Cookies and Cream. It grows very well. I've had success with it indoor, outdoor, and in a depth. And dude, it pretty much does the work for you in the bags as far as the 90 through 120 goes. And, it rosins great as well. It dries very nicely. It's a very stable and easy resin to work with, and it presses very well. And it's just it's an all around, checks all boxes for me: looks, appeal, yield, presentation, all the way through. And I even am venturing out into running some CNC crosses and other stuff mixed with it. And that's definitely one that I'm going to keep around and keep working with, especially all the different phenos We ran the 5 and the 7 and the 13 this year, and they're all a little different in their own way, but they all make super great hash, and I enjoyed working with each one of them.
Agreed. I've got some concentrated X cookies and cream right here, and it is absolute fire.
Fire hash strain, best rosin strain I've seen around. Even 4 or 5 years ago, it was with Have Hash. It was dumping just milky rosin, even from just cured flour dumped too. So, beautiful.
Yeah, that and the Kimbo Kush. The Kimbo Kush, similar genetic line was fantastic. I remember the first time I washed it and was like, oh, that's why Cuban won all those cups. Like, this shit dumps and it just is amazing. And that was from dry material. I could only imagine if I got fresh frozen. But another one I like to do is my personal favorite is OG Pie Breath. That's what I've been running. It's a solid pheno, checks all boxes as well. Pretty stable. I've been trying to search through seeds to see something new, and I just can't find anything that really has beaten it for the last 5 years. So I just keep running it.
We washed some peanut butter breath from a local grower last year, and it washed really, really well. And we've been wanting to try growing it. Just thought I'd mention it.
Awesome. Keep them coming, man. Keep them coming. I'll throw one down. DNA Genetics Strawberry Banana.
One of the best out there for sure.
What the fuck is up with that?
I just got that.
Woo-hoo.
Back in.
Banana.
Got that Midas touch.
A good banana.
So white in every bag,
I just watched them
180 to
yesterday.
40. Or 20.
All the extracts and everything.
I run their White Walker too, even as like a classic hash strain for a really good indica temple ball, cured resin temple ball strain. Makes a shiny coating on the outside of the White Walker balls and just nice, after time, nice cream on the inside, but it's one of our indica choices, more indica choices.
If you scroll through my feed on IG, you're going to see a lot of banana OG. And I think it's very similar to that Straw Nana. I mean, I haven't ran the Straw Nana, but from what I've heard from Soil Grown and other folks that have ran it, very similar. White in every bag, very heavy yielding, maybe a high wax content. I'm not sure why it's so.
Crockett's family.
I'd like to chime in and say, to me, there's different cuts floating around. There's like that Straw Nana, the 14er is what I hear people refer to it as. To me, that's really big yields and it's great unto itself. And then there's also this other cut going around called Strawberry Banana. That's, to me, they're two different things. The Strawberry Banana is more closely related to the Banana OG that I see around. The Straw Nana is more speared out, kind of different structure. But that Strawberry Banana, I personally prefer over the Straw Nana 14er. I get like 6.35% melt back on fresh frozen material. It dumps, super terpy. Been washing it for years, but everyone still loves it. It smells like a strawberry milkshake, like people can't get enough of it.
That banana that you washed, Gil, is something really fire too. That that you have is super special. I got to try some of the last time we hung out, and I really enjoyed. That was one of my favorite bananas that I've tried.
It's just a super awesome banana OG cut that's been up here in the Humboldt area for years. Like, again, I think there's probably a few banana OGs out there, but that one that you're talking about, it does stand out. It's just super candy banana. It's awesome, man. It's awesome.
The Strawberry Fields, it comes in pretty hot too, with the Crockett right behind with DNA Project there on the Tangy thrown in on the Strawberry Banana. Had some really good phenos of Strawberry Fields 4 or 5 years ago out there. And they've carried into my genetic program. Actually, today I do a Clementine cookies and cream actually to my Angel food cake. And yeah, it just really, really gives that, fruit forward cookie back type thing for breeding too, with those fruity terps on a gemmy cookie on the back end for the look, and then just the loud on the Strawberry Banana, and throw Tangy and it's hard to go wrong. That Midas touch of Tangy type thing.
Yeah, I'll throw another one out. Wedding Cake. Nice producer, really nice resin, leaves very little residual when grown properly. It's got that heaviness.
She's so greasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
To me, it's
We
hard
grew
to
wedding
work
cake last year, and it did really well.
To me,
Really
fresh
nice
frozen.
vanilla cake flavor.
Mm-hmm. What's that, Gil?
Nah, the wedding cake I usually grow outside. It's so greasy. I ain't gonna lie. It's like a bitch to work with. It makes awesome melt. It's amazing. But like I lose a lot to the bags. It's so fucking sticky personally. Where not saying I don't love it, but just as far as working with it, that GMO, that strawberry banana, they're just drier resins that are easier to handle. For me personally, that's my experience with wedding cake, but it's an awesome full melt strain.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Pretty great strains, man. I got a nice long list so far. I'll do an Instagram post and post it.
I love that.
Yeah.
That Motor Breath 15. I'm getting high 5% yields on fresh frozen. Nice dry resin to work with. Everyone in California hash brands are running with it. That Motor Breath is fire. Key lime pie is an oldie but a goodie. I've been washing that for years. Makes great resin. It's like upper 4%.
What about the Grease Monkey? I just got that in.
Hell yeah. I just got some crosses from Exotic Genetics, where it's all the Grease Monkeys is the male. That's a great one too.
Has anybody
That's
ran
really
the original or washed the original Grease Monkey? And
Yeah.
I just got that Phenom in, so I haven't grown it yet.
Yeah, I like the Grease Monkey a lot. It whenever we ran it, it seemed to grow fairly well, fairly vigorous, and it dumped and did really well for hash and rosin. That a lot of people hate on glue, dude, but I love
glue.
Yeah, no. So if you can find a good glue hitter, it's especially even back to the cookies and cream, it's hard to beat that.
I've got a Buddha Tahoe I crossed to that Mac male, or my friend sent me some of that Mac pollen actually, and I hit the Buddha Tahoe OG, and it's turning out some just amazing resins in terms of how they bond and after pressing and everything, just looking wise, and then very classic cushy hash smell. It's not super out front loud. I think some of it might wash back into the water or something as I'm learning and finding. But amazing resins off the Buddha Tahoe for sure.
Just got another cultivar in too. It's called Twizzlers. It's a kosher Tangy 24K, I guess, crossed with cherry pie, and that's also a new one to me. I haven't washed or pressed those strains independently, but I'm wondering if any of you guys on the panel have any experience with those.
Yeah,
Twizzlers. It's kosher Tangy crossed with cherry pie.
That sounds amazing.
It's a new one from the Bay, I guess.
Do well, I think. Both of those, I know. I've seen cherry pie do well. Obviously, I've seen kosher Tangy do amazing. So
yeah,
that sounds fire.
Definitely, the potential is there.
I need some Twizzlers.
It's a new strain in the Bay, supposedly. It's just starting to pop up in sessions and around the area.
That's got to be so loud. Just all.
I've seen it a couple times. Scabs Fatheads.
I'm not even sure who the breeder is, to be honest.
Loving the list, guys. Loving the list. It's good to get this list out there. What's up, Sam?
People use high CBD strains, and you either make rosin or whatever you're making out of it. Does it have a different texture? Because when I made my CBD strain, I found it was very dry and not very sticky.
I got super glue out of my hemp field this year. I did 1 acre, and I actually turned some sour space candy into some bubble balls, the bubble hash temple balls. So I'm pressing and balling some hemp strains just for trying it. I got a purple orange from Dynafem that's a 1-to-1, 2-to-1 thing that I'm running that makes amazing ash. But
THC. I'm wondering about varieties that have little to no THC, just CBD.
Sour space candy was straight CBD, almost not even registrable THC at all. Very, very little. And that made like gluey, tacky black type of hash, man. I mean, we were even impressed. It's not melt, so we didn't get a melt off of it. But the tack on it was like you couldn't pull the thing apart. You have to, cut it, heat it up or something to get it to even pull apart. It was really gluey. Had a lot of glue to it. From the bubble hash, cured resin flour.
How is that made?
Sorry, I missed you.
Yeah. Making dry sift with CBD.
You cut out, Sam.
Dry sift was dry for me on the hemp stuff, on the CBD. Very dry.
Exactly what I found.
Yeah, no resin-headed glands that were sticky and very little smell. It was kind of unpleasant.
There was resin heads, but they were dry. They weren't sticky. They weren't greasy. Absolutely correct.
All right, thank you.
I think it's that cherry smell too that people say is the cherry smell from the CBD varieties.
CBD doesn't have a smell.
No, the terpene profile, Sam, that goes along.
I understand.
I've watched a whole 10-foot plant of one of those, and it was just not a nightmare. You know, all that good stuff just washes right down the drain. You know?
I just bred a Tangie stud, or what was it, Taffy stud, Tangie to LA Affy, and then a guava jelly male also on multiple types from Oregon CBD in my hemp field this year. So I got some terp forward matchups coming up for real medicine strains, hoping to pull some beautiful hash with a flavor from it, actually.
So many good cultivars. We got any left in the room?
Grape pie. I always do good well. Grape pie. GMOs, all the GMO. I have a GMO by Cookies and Cream that does real well. Wonka bars, it's called.
Wonka bars, right?
Like to try that.
So many good cultivars. I do kind of dream of a day where cultivars are like, there's, you know, that they're accessible, that you could just order them in an aseptic box from a tissue culture company, and they've been initiated, and all of the, anything's been like guaranteed to not be present from a virus, microbial, fungi perspective, and just have the advantage of being able to choose all of these different cultivars, and not only choose them blindly, but choose them based on data collected from extractors who are processing in a variety of ways with all of these different cultivars, and showing where these cultivars shine the most in their extraction processes. So then you could order your cultivars like, oh, I want to do a dry sift. You know, I just want to dry sift the whole crop, and be like, open the tissue culture menu and see like, oh, look at this. The first 2 pages are dry sift cultivars. You know, these are the dry sift cultivars for greenhouses. These are the indoor dry sift cultivars, you know, and have each extraction process down the line have that available. And that would just be a really beautiful, beautiful thing if that were the case. You know, clean, initiated, vigorous genetics ready to express.
So what about those hash strains that have large heads? You were talking about that earlier, and my strain, the OG Pie Breath, has pretty melty heads in the 150 and 180. I mean, I found that with lights that have higher UV intensity, that's actually created more of a melt in the higher micron range. Has anybody else seen that, like with CMH or what's the other one? The plasma or LED?
I can't really say I have firsthand, but man, Jibs, I don't know, probably everybody in here follows Trichome heavy. He's been pulling huge 220, 180, 150 bags, and he said he can't, I've been talking to him about it, he can't really put his finger on why he's getting big heads from growers that he's worked with in the past, and he didn't. You know, he said he's getting some on salt grows, he's getting it on living soil grows that he's getting. He just thinks that it's just genetics have gotten better.
Is it fresh frozen or dried material?
He works with all fresh frozen too.
Me as well.
Fresh frozen will be bigger heads than dried material, especially dried and cured material.
That's really big though.
It is, and I'm not saying it's only because of that. I'm just saying that fresh frozen material has bigger heads than dried and cured material.
Absolutely undeniable.
Because it starts to raisin up.
Yep, that's the truth.
Does anybody mess with washing partially dried material?
I know
I feel
Chris, Bobby, didn't you used to, that's what you guys did at your last job, right?
Yeah, we ran a lot of stuff that was just like harvested, hung for a couple days, and then bucked down like it would be fresh frozen into freezers and then washed. Yeah,
and how
it
long
does
was
really
your
well.
dry time?
Like in the freeze dryer, like drying the hash or drying the material?
Your hang drying.
It was anywhere from like 5 to 7 days.
Gotcha.
And it was in a really cold, dark room, super controlled environment. And then the material was handled by, 1 to 2 people, and it was bucked down real lightly into the freezer and then washed that way by hand, And that was just for rosin production. We weren't making, there was no like, we're making $6 here and that's a thing. It was just, they were producing rosin there and, that was that.
What do you prefer now that you guys do fresh frozen? What do you guys prefer, or what do you prefer, excuse me?
Fresh frozen, 100%. Just the full melt that comes from it. I've made a lot of full melt from dry material and it's good, but the difference between the terpenes and the effects is totally different for me. And when you've got really good material that dumps for fresh frozen, it's such a fun thing to wash that material versus doing it dry. I don't really like to smoke dry resin near as much as I do fresh frozen. Just because a lot of the strains that we've been running over here dump, just the same as all the dry material did over there. Like the lemon peel, for example, Dirty Taxi, Kim de la Kim, Moonbow 99 and 112. Those produce some of the craziest resin I've ever seen when it comes down to like full melt. And they're a lot bigger heads. It all, dumps between the 90 through, 179. You're getting full melt,
In my experience, washing dried material, all you're really going to gain is a slight yield increase, but you're going to sacrifice so much terps that to me, it's not worth it. I just did a dry on some MAC. Everyone says, oh, MAC 1 isn't a hash strain. It's terrible. It's terpless, blah, blah, blah. I'll say it's mild on the terps, but I fresh froze a lot of it, and then I partially dried it just for my own. I always do fresh frozen, but I wanted to know for myself. This is supposedly not a hash cultivar. I'm going to try washing it fresh frozen, and then I'm going to try washing it. It was a 7-day dry, 60 and 60, all grown next to each other, in the same bed, same situation. It's tough with percentage wise because I have a percentage based off of dry and a percentage based off of wet, but I only got like 15 more grams from a pound washing it partially dried. I felt a little stronger on the effects. I feel like a lot of times dried material, I don't know, affects me in a way where it seems a little stronger. But yeah, like I said, there's usually a lack of terps. It's kind of hard to tell with melt, but when you rosin it, it's pretty obvious the difference in my experience.
Yeah, me too. The rosin was not as terpy as any of the fresh frozen material was, so I prefer the fresh frozen for that reason as well, the terpene preservation.
That's why I brought up the partial cure aspect, because trying to do it like 7 days is even probably a little too much in my opinion. Like the 3 to 4 day max at 60 and 60, and then bucked down and frozen and then washed. I still felt like I got that higher yield, but I also kept a lot more of the terpenes than I would if I would have dried it completely. But obviously for sure, definitely not as much with fresh frozen. But it kind of got the best of both worlds, at least a few times that I've experimented with it. That's why I bring it up.
How about a freezer cure then?
A freezer cure? What was that?
Yeah, like a freezer cure, because technically, it's a freezer is at low temperature and very low humidity. So if you leave your material in there for, say, like a month when you had other stuff to process, aren't you somewhat curing it a little bit?
I'd have to agree.
You're removing a very tiny amount of moisture, but potentially, What's everybody's thoughts?
I
I mean,
mean,
how long does everybody like to wait for fresh frozen before you start washing it before you
I
take it out of the
stuffed
freezer?
in my freezer for a year and a half before and washed it, and it washed amazing. You know, I'm all doing it by myself, so I've had stuff in my freezer for a long time. By no means am I freezing it and processing it right away. A lot of times I'm just stuffing freezers all season long, and then in the winter I process it and work seasonally. So I hear you about it curing in the freezer, but at the same time, I feel like my material isn't changing all that much in a chest freezer at -30 to -50. But again, that's just my opinion.
Well, freezers generally preserve. You're not, of course, terpenes are extremely volatile and there could be some things going on there, but nothing compared to like room temperature or even just the cold temperature of a fridge. You're freezing, that preserves.
Freezers will change the color of buds, for example. It will darken them.
It will. Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking more like moisture, like taking a little, not necessarily like terpenes, but more of like taking a little bit of the moisture out. Because isn't that technically what freezer burn is? Is like all the moisture has gone out of the chicken from freezing?
Yep, pulled it out. I had material in my freezer. It was dry. It was from a grow I did like in 2012. And I just pulled it out like a couple years ago. It was like old. It was like 6 years old or something. And I pressed it. I was just like, oh, this is just flour. I'm just going to press it. And I just got this like baby diaper, like yellow shit that was so fucking loud that most of the people I showed it to just could not believe that it was 6-year-old dried bud that I squished like a day and a half ago. Like I would open it and people like very far away would be like, do you smell that? Like it was really, really loud. So you just never know what kind of preservation you've got going on. But I wouldn't have guessed it was that extreme from this material. It was Harmony, a cut I got from Reefer Man. That Harmony is no joke, if any of you have ever grown that.
I guarantee if you freeze whole dry sieved heads, if you freeze it at -30, kept away from oxygen as much as possible, that 10, 15 years later, if it's changed, it's such a tiny bit, I can't tell the difference.
Right. Well, that old resin, do you remember the old resin that our friend Michael had? It was like old.
Yeah, but I don't think that was frozen.
Dude, for sure not. Every year that I smoked it, and I can't remember, I think I started smoking it when it was like, I don't know, 13 years old or something. And then I smoked it every year till it was like, how old did it get? Like, was it like 17 or 18 or something years old? Did you smoke that till the end? I think it came to
I don't know, but I think the piece is now getting Social Security.
Right? All I know about that piece of hash, it was powder, like red dust, like crazy dry sift that was so pure, but it was old. Like, I don't know what year that shit was from.
That's because Michael did not keep it in a freezer. He
That's
kept
too bad.
it in a suitcase in his bedroom.
And I get people wanting to like cure hash. I have some hash here on my table that's almost 10 years old right now. It's like glass. It's like you crack it open and it's real shiny. But maybe I'll take a dab of that in a bit. But it would have been nice to preserve it so that it's what you remember years down the road. You've kept something for 10 years, but instead of curing it and changing all of it, at least keep some in a preserved manner. Now, here's something I want to bring up. For years, we cured bud. We cured bud because it was harsh when it still had moisture in it. And some of those monoterpenes were more caustic and just sort of sharp. And the bouquet of the terpenes that came out underneath and revealed themselves as some of those monos evaporated out, volatilized off, that's how we always enjoyed flour. Eventually, we got into water hash. All the first water hash I made was from dry material. All the full melts from Renee was from bone dry material. Like, it was dry and it produced full melt. So a lot of people couldn't produce. And really, it seemed like the birth of fresh frozen was also the birth of faux melt, which is, appears to be full melt, but it's really not. It's something a little bit different. And so I wonder in this new generation where we've come this full, 180 degrees from liking to cure things out so it's smooth. And I remember having some dry sift that I had made out of some sweet skunk, and it was like the material had been cured for months, and then I sifted, and then the sift had been cured for months. And when you took a dab of it, it was full mouth, but it was just so smooth and nice, quite different from that sort of caustic, like, whoa, I just took a dab of some really fresh frozen, freeze-dried, like white, full melt, like it's really terpy. And I just wonder the differences in that how we've come like, and when I was in Amsterdam, it was actually Tony from Sagamartha Seeds that I bumped into, Sam, and I can't remember, we were at like Hank's apartment above the Bulldog in the Leidseplein. And he had been taking some dabs, and he was kind of like, oh, I don't want any more. And I said, oh, take one of these. It's really special. And he took a dab of it, and he just blew this dab out. And there was no coughing, and it was just smooth. And I wonder what you guys have to say about the difference between those two experiences. Having a hash that you cure the material out before you wash it and cure that for a little bit, versus let's save every single terpene, the ones that would have normally evaporated off in the drying process, and let's contain them all and instead, breathe all of those in for the dab experience. There's a conversation, right? The difference between those two things. Surely you guys have experienced that.
Well, a good example is that every year because I used to smoke lots of ganja. I've smoked hash for the last 25, 30 years. But before that, I smoked massive amounts of ganja. And I grew it up in Santa Cruz. And when I harvested it every year, my voice, I would get laryngitis from smoking weed that had dried for 2 weeks, and I couldn't wait, and it was really, really potent cannabis. It was really loud cannabis, like either skunk or haze or one of those type things. And I guarantee you, every year for 5, 6 years in a row, I got laryngitis at Thanksgiving when it was the new harvest season. And I know it was because of the terps, but it could have also been partly from the plant material itself. It was not properly, it was barely dry enough, but it wasn't cured at all.
We're definitely smoking a different profile of terpenes than we ever had in our history, just freshly in this last 20 years, starting to do extracts, different ratios. Forget about the adding of cannabis extracted terpenes or the infamous fruit terpenes. But we're definitely inhaling differently in the last 20 years. And I just wonder how that'll affect us inhaling terpene profiles that maybe we haven't been inhaling for the last like 40 to 50 years, because that bud was cured, and that, the flower was always about being cured. And now it's really all about preservation of the entire profile from the time you cut the plant down, you're flash freezing it, you're washing it, you're freeze drying that. Very little heat can be exposed to that over the course of its life. And now you have this terpene profile that I guarantee you is quite different from the terpene profile of the same cured flower or hash.
What is smoking higher terpene concentrations doing to us as well?
I don't know.
Terpenes are caustic, and I know not necessarily for hash, but some of the like BHO sauce, they're getting crazy high terpene numbers. I know, at least for me, when I inhale that stuff, man, it makes my lungs not super happy, I don't think. That super terp hit,
I have a question for Adam. Do you notice a difference in, say, terps or terpene profiles in air dried versus freeze dried hash?
I honestly, there's a reason why everybody's freeze drying. I think that it's super rare to get air dried hash. Like, what year was that? Whenever the freeze dryer just banged everybody over, like, it was just like, what? Everybody has amazing, perfectly dried resin back to back to back to back to back, whereas it was like a struggle
It's only been about 2 years since the freeze dryer came out.
Yeah, exactly.
No, more than that. More than that. If Fletcher was in
I'd say
here,
about 4.5.
Yeah, I wish Fletcher was.
Fletcher really was one of the first people to start suggesting the freeze dryer.
Absolutely, but I mean, like when it's spread out. I mean, you know, this is just my experience from Northern California. I'd go to Emerald Cup, and then that's where a lot of people obviously travel. And seeing all of that hash all of a sudden from a freeze dryer was just like, okay, like this.
Adam, for me, it was like 2015 to like 2016. I feel like you went from a bunch of hand dried hash entries to the next year there was like one, if that. And it was just everything was freeze dried hash, just like overnight kind of thing.
Yeah, I got mine in 2015 after I saw Michigan Made Melts had it, and it was like I was gonna buy a vac oven to do Cuban tech, and it was like, well, that's cold. That's maybe what I want to do more so.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, I'm you know, I'm just, it's a seasonal garden, so it's seasonal work for me. I just don't have the balls to buy a freeze dryer and put the melt through it like that. I don't want to, because I know that it's a really efficient tool, but sometimes it can be a little too efficient. And like, I just haven't been able to do that trial and error yet. I'm sure one day I will, you know, but yeah, I'm still air drying everything by hand with a microplane because like Marcus was bringing up earlier, like I think that sometimes water can leach, or maybe not leach, but maybe water can sometimes go in that trichome, and maybe not all trichomes are perfect. And so I shred them up with a microplane, and like they're not all shredded up. There are some that aren't, and it's like really cool to look at the pictures that where it's like, well, holy shit! Like I took a microplane to this, and this thing should be shredded straight in half, but it's completely whole. Like what's going on? So you know, there's a finesse and a sleight of hand technique to air drying, and I haven't seen the side to side enough to know. All I know is that freeze drying it changed the game. Yeah, no, I to answer the question better, I haven't seen enough side by side work, especially with myself. I'm very ignorant when it comes to the freeze dryer. I've never used one personally. I've just heard everybody's experience and tried to.
If you want to do some research on them, you should Google lyophilization. So that's like, yeah, with the pharmaceutical freeze
I did
dryer.
a side by side. I think it was about 2016 when I first got it. I was still doing most of my first run, you know, melt, quote unquote melt. I was still microplaning and hand drying. And then like my later runs, I was throwing in the freeze dryer so I could press them literally the next day, you know, to make rosin. And I did it with the 24K. And I didn't have, I guess, the best place to air dry. It was on racks in an open room, no HEPA filter kind of thing. You know, it was pretty legit situation, but it could be better. And I honestly preferred the freeze dried hash in the end. The air dried was on the rack 7 to 10 days. Now I know there's some people getting their microplane hash dried quicker than that. So
we're doing 2 weeks dry.
Just my experience on that, you know, that one cultivar.
But what were you drying it on? Did you have it on parchment?
I had it on parchment lined cookie rack sheets.
Right. So parchment's not a desiccant.
Yeah.
So you created the area, the surface area for it to dry, but you only allowed it to air dry. Had you used a desiccant to pull the water out, which gravity helps, plus it's just water will always kind of settle down. And if you give it something that it can absorb into, it'll absorb dry, and it dries like very differently than if you don't. I kind of said that from early days. You know, what happened was when we start, you know, I ended up showing people, you know, drying on like pizza boxes or whatever, because I was in the Pacific Northwest. And if you wanted a hope of getting your hash dry, especially in like November, December, when it's just like pouring, you know, 50 millimeters of rain every day, you can't even believe how much fucking rain it is. You really need to have the help of a desiccant. And then Nicotese started making hash maybe like 8 to 10 years later. And it was like, he was like, oh, you don't need to do that. Like, you can just do it like this. And I was just like, bro, you're in Colorado where it's really dry. Like, if you tell people in the Pacific Northwest that they don't need to do that and that they can just do this, it's not going to work out for them. And that really began that dialogue and that conversation of, we're not all in the same environments. Our terroirs are different, and we have to act accordingly to that when we do things like drying hash. Does a lyophilization oven or a freeze dryer take the some of the worry out of that? Absolutely. You know, especially if you're selling to a market, whether it be rec or medical for sure. Freeze dryer is going to ensure that not one single chunk of your hash was microplaned or sieved too large, held enough water to, you know, create microbial content and, you know, potentially offer someone something they didn't need, you know, particularly if they were patient and already immune compromised or whatnot. So freeze dryers do have a purpose. I think that the harvest rights are kind of like cute little toys. They're great for the beginning of our industry, but when you get into actual production, you're going to get into, you know, something like a Millrock, a large scale unit, because here's the thing. You start making large scale water hash, you start getting that machine to be able to do really large runs and make many, many, many kilos a day. Your limitation won't be in the size of your unit or in your biomass or in your ice production or in your ability to condition your water. It will be in your freeze dryer rack space. That will be your limitation. And so if you want to, you know, if you feel that you have the ability to produce a lot of good hash that's going to require freeze drying, because there are other alternatives if hash isn't going to be melty here in Canada, what we do with it. And my partner Daniel at Whistler Technologies came up with this with his partner Brishna, and they basically just figured out quite a while ago that, hey, why don't we, if we could get, and the reason they did this was Canada was stuck in a place where you couldn't sell hash, but you could take the hash that you made and infuse it into a plant fat and sell it in a 30 ml vial with a particular, you know, it has to be somewhat diluted. It's a very small amount of cannabinoids per ml. This was Canada for the last 3 or 4 years, and that's changed now with rec and medical kind of opening up bigger. But that's the way it was at the time. Don't let me lose my train of thought here. My goodness, that robot voice threw me off for a bit. So what was
lyophilization?
Lyophilization ovens, right? So Daniel and Brishna came up with for Whistler Technologies to start the company, to sell a unit to Whistler Medical, and for them to say, listen, you can take this hash, and because you can't dry it and sell it as a hash product, what you can do is you can get our terp reactor, which is about 200 liters, and you can infuse plant fats, you can infuse bubble, fresh bubble, the bubble never dries. And what you end up with once you filter through a membrane and remove all the water and the waxes and end up with this really beautiful, you know, hash infused oil, you end up with a terpene content that is about 2 times higher than the majority of the companies in Canada that are selling these infused oils. So that's one of the sort of technologies that Whistler Technologies helped to make bubble hash a commercial thing, is that, you know, you don't want to sacrifice your quality if it's there, but you want your workhorse to be able to work. And if there's no quality and there's some you know, 3 to 4 star hash, we can certainly still run it and infuse it into plant fats and produce this really great high terpene plant content extraction. So that was one of the things that he did that really sort of inspired me about becoming a part of the company, because it was one of the things that kept, you know, as all of you know, as hash makers, it's very hard to sometimes make a business with just making, you know, water hash, you know, because unless you have a really great connection, you know, before rosin came into play, when you really had to deal with the hash that you had, you know, that was an amazing method to just take that hash, very fresh, don't dry it, infuse it into plant fat, decarboxylate it under a vacuum, and then filter it through a membrane to get all that stuff out. That's the very medicine that my own mother, who worked for the police for 30 plus years as a 911 operator, my own mother uses that product, you know, via Whistler Technologies through Whistler Medical, and just orders it off the internet. So we've come a long way, and we have a long way to go. 11:33. I'd rock this out for another half hour solid if you guys want to twist and change direction, or if you want to keep on this direction. I think all of these topics are great. so great that I'm going to have to make like a once a month water hash, panel where we get like 30 to 40 of us on a list, and then whoever can make it each month or that 1 week a month can kind of put their name in the pile, because I think there's a lot to talk about with hash making, and clearly we're all obsessed and geeking out on it. So it is a spiritual thing.
I wanted to see what breeders people were working with for finding like hash specific cultivars.
Definitely.
Swamp Boys.
Swamp Boys goes hard.
Coming into new work with them has been really on point. Seems like stable work even, and Skunk VA actually for some gassy gear turn, and Crockett's family under DNA and Crockett. So.
Yeah, I did a Tasty Waves from Swamp Boys that turned out really good. It did like 5.3% melt, so not the best, but really nice. Kind of had like a chemi GMO flavor. Did really well.
The 91 Royale I just turned, actually, it's not my favorite, but one of two phenos just was tacky, fresh frozen, couldn't do much with it. It was like really, really, really gluey even.
Nice problem to have. It involves some trickery, especially if you're going to sieve shit like that. You better leave moisture content in your patty. Don't let that shit wick out on the pressing screen with some paper towels under there. You'll walk away for 2 minutes and come back and have a fucking piece of Hubba Bubba gum that's pressed itself into a gummy, sticky mass, and now you're microplaning no matter what.
Right.
Anyone else for breeders? I got one. How about Skunkman Sam?
Do well with exotic genetics also.
Exotics, yeah.
Other stuff,
Yeah, exotics. Oni, I've had good luck with Oni Seedco as well too.
Oni noodles.
Yeah, Oni's good. Obviously. And some papaya cake from Oni that's good.
Archive does really well.
Archive.
Yeah.
That biscuits was fire. I want to get some more seeds of that.
We ran some King Stash actually that was fire. That made really beautiful.
Yeah.
Flour.
Just watched a bunch of that the other day.
How about
it did
this?
really well.
In 2005.
What I like is Jesse, BioVortex.
BioVortex? Let's write it down. I'm making the list. Checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Who's
Seed
full
Junkie's
mouth.
another good one.
Seed Junkies? What?
Seed Junkie. His Kush Cake, his Hidden Pastries, those did really well. Definitely worth washing. Wedding Cake, that's another one.
I enjoyed all the Seed Junkie gear for sure.
Yeah. Oni cakes. Oni's good. Exotic.
Got Dark Horse as well.
How about Thug Pug? Vessel Life Science just texted me. He's like, Thug Pug's been killing it. Mention Thug Pug. So there you go, Vessel. I did.
All I heard was Vortex, but
We're gonna. I'll start.
Vortex,
I haven't found a way yet, but I'm gonna start now that it's being opened up to share strains, and I'm finding the good cultivars that we have in house. I'll find some way to share them out. At least, we're folding into adult use at the farm into Maine really soon this year. Looking for a boat in June, but we're doing medical only right now. For a while. Would love to share some of the hash plant type cultivars from us outward, and look to do that later. So,
Harry Palms is another really good one to mention. Talking about Oni, he's doing his own thing now, but yeah, Harry Palms, you make some really good hash strains.
I wonder what he was thinking when he chose that name. Like, I'm a cannabis breeder. I'm gonna rock the Harry Palms name. Like,
bro, he's got some.
That's what's up. I wrote them down, man. I wrote it down.
The sour garlic cookies was nice. The sour dub and GMO from Harry.
Nice.
Just black garlic the other day, and it did really well.
You also got Wizard of Oz.
How about some old school Doc Atomic, Spice of Life, DJ Short?
I like a lot of Bodie's gear too. The Chem really good.
Yeah,
like the Chem Dog crossed with the 88 G13 hash plant. I like that a lot for sure.
Yeah,
I run some.
Sure.
We got some greenhouse seeds in the house, actually, from in our gear. I got my Clementine cookies and cream, and what is it? Super lemon haze is worked into that. That's very super loud on the lemon side. Not the favorite for the terp, but very, very loudest thing around. So super lemon haze.
Garden of Grease down in Southern Oregon, Kushkirk.
Yeah.
That's another reader to mention as well. That dude fucking crushes.
We got some guava punch here from Brandon. That's freaking amazing, dude.
Just about to say, he gave me seeds of that, and we ran it here in the greenhouse, and it did absolutely amazing. You know, mixed all the
He just laced us with a whole grip of some serious new heat.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's breeding tons of crazy genetics out where he's at. You know, all for resin production. So check him out for sure. He's worth
The
looking at.
most slept on breeder, I think.
Yeah, Garden of Grease.
Yeah.
Talk about growing your own food and like
Everything.
houses. This man, like he lives on that farm. His kitchen is outside in the hoop house. His alpacas feed everything that he does. He's amending soil all day. It's a crazy thing to go check that man out. Like go follow him on Instagram, Kushkirk, because he's crushing it. Him and Scott were the ones that taught me everything I know about making full melt.
Kushkirk, is that what you said?
Yeah, Kushkirk. Yeah, he's the man.
He's got the real OGKB too. Oof.
I thought I
miss that
invited
strain.
him. I thought I invited him to this. He was one of the people that never got back to me.
I don't know if he has a computer.
Maybe not, but Dragonfly Earth Medicine hooked me up with Ganja Gill and Kushkirk's email, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we got to get
have him on for sure. Like,
Yeah, I definitely would.
Sure.
For sure.
We'll have to go to him. One of us will have to go to him.
That's it. We send you out into the world with the SAT computer, do some live streaming. Yeah, no, for sure. Dragonfly Earth Medicine definitely. They sent me a video of Ganja Gill and Kushkirk sitting and talking about cultivars and hash making.
I was lucky enough in with Brandon, with that guy Kushkirk, learning how to make hash, and it was quite an experience. It was a crazy thing to get to spend all that time with him at his garden, and washing material and seeing how he lives his life every day, and having him explain to me, what the plant means to him, and it's really a beautiful thing. That process was crazy. I think about it all the time, and how grateful I am to be able to get to go and share that experience with him. It was crazy. It was truly life changing for sure.
Yeah, man, I was just going to say that visiting his farm, we went up there for the harvest party this year. That shit literally changed my life, man. Gave me a new breath of life coming out of his property. It's
living the dream.
Amazing
Straight up.
thing they have going on up there.
That's awesome. Good to hear. Well, we'll definitely get Kushkirk in the house one of these days if it works out. We'll get him. Anyone else want to bring anything up for the last 20 minutes or so? We got 20 more minutes to rock and roll on this hash episode.
I just want to
go ahead.
Say something about the breeding. I'm not a breeder, but I really like it whenever people are trying to find those cultivars that work well with the water hash or just hash making. Because a lot of them aren't, like a lot of them that we probably love or the smell is amazing. It's just going to wash right down the disposal. It'd be a total waste to make hash out of it. So if you can sift genetics and try to find maybe similar or maybe it's the same profile as the one that's washing down the disposal, but it's now viable in the bag set. I know that takes a lot of work and.
It's really awesome what's going on these days, actually, with the hashing to lend back into the better strain work and the new poly hybrid day that we're in for cannabis. Is really, at least personally, it's seeing the resins get pulled out this way naturally, real raw, and then, feeding it back into which type of cultivars we're looking for, what we're trying to produce to create those. Is really teaching me a lot as a breeder and cultivator with the bubble hash being made on with that R&D. So it's Cirque goes back and forth with it.
Also breeding for your environment just seems totally smart if you have the if you're able to do such things. You're not only setting yourself apart from the rest, but it seems like it'd be just a better model if you have if you're at that level.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely important to find cultivars that do well in your climate where you're at. You know, we're in Michigan, and so you know, our GMO went through three or four frosts this year. Froze solid and then sprung back the next day.
Was ready to go.
Fresh frozen, baby.
Rocco ready to go.
The real question is, have you guys been sitting in the cold room the whole time?
That's what's up.
Yeah, this is our workroom here. We got the we got our suits there.
That's hella funny. You say, I see you breathing out like it looks like you're hella cold. You know, it looks like you're getting cold now. You've been in there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's funny.
Yeah.
3 hours. Forget about an hour and a half.
It's 3 hours.
3 hours we've been talking about our love of hash, cultivars, and flavors. You know, one of the things, and I've mentioned this before, maybe not super recently, but one of the things my company, Embark Health, wants to do is, in sort of close conjunction with the tissue culture company like Segra International, is to collect our data between the two of us, between the growers who are producing, the way they're growing, get as many data inputs as possible. When we're making the hash, when we're making, you know, there's 7 varieties of extraction available at our facility. I'm going to be running the solventless portion of it, the dry sift and mechanical, you know, water extraction and rosin and maybe some terpene extractions. Collecting all of that data will really help uncover more of these cultivars and really start understanding the cultivars, not based on someone's name because it's a specific cut, but starting to understand them under the chemovaric makeup that they actually are, which is really what they are to us. What is the terpene profile? What is the cannabinoid profile? What are they together? Because to me, that's what that cultivar is. And with people naming things so many different names and having so many different cuts and making mistakes and even just being deceptive, it really sort of spoils the pot. And I like the idea of us getting to a point where, you know, something easy, you know, where you can just test and be like, oh, this is that, this, you know, you can connect it to the name still, but the name will be secondary. The chemovaric makeup of the plant will be first and foremost.
But who grows it makes a huge difference in what you're gonna find when you go into the washroom with it. I mean, I've given my 24K cut out to a few people. I grow it outside in Laytonville, which is in Mendocino. I get a lot of shade. We get maybe 7 full hours of sun a day in the middle of summer. I've given it to my friends who grow it in a different microclimate that gets a little warmer, and they get direct sun from sun up to sundown. And I'm only getting, you know, they're doing basically the same soil mix that I am, same feeding program I am. And off their gardens, I hit about 3.5%. Off my garden, I hit 5.5 to 6%. And that's
but your terps are better probably.
My terps
for sure. The shade ground.
My all around, mine's better.
Yeah.
But
that's a huge, here's the thing, that's part of the data. So collecting and running 100 or 200 different growers, all of that data will be collected. How did they grow it? What was their climate? What was their you know, was it indoor? Was it outdoor? Was it organic? Was it salt grown? All of these things will feed into that data plan, because at that point it'll be like, well, where are you? You know, because these are cultivars that have been grown around you, and these are cultivars that have been grown around you in using the methodologies that are similar to what you're growing. There's a lot of data points. I'm just excited at creating something like a digital landscape out of those data points that can be navigated to give us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have a stack, you know, from this year of paperwork from, you know, we just keep track of our runs, what we pull, you know, when it was ran, all that kind of stuff. Is not as many data points as you're talking about, but it's fun to be able to go back and look at, you know, the same strain grown in different areas or just different conditions at your farm, say the July dep versus, you know, a late season dep or a full term plant, and just the differences. It's, you know,
Terroir has a big play on how things grow, and it'll give people their unique aspect in this world cannabis community and industry, because you might live in a terroir that just produces something unique and different from other terroirs. That's generally how it works. Things find a place where they shine the most.
I think the data points really go back to what Sam was saying at the beginning too, with being able to automate things. You need to have all those data points to be able to do that. So, I mean, even to where things are grown, like different areas, we take in a lot of things from a lot of different parts of the state, and I see like a lot of the same different strains come out of a lot different from different areas of the state. So, keeping all the different data and all that stuff, I think goes back to like exactly what you're saying, where you need to keep them as detailed as possible, what the soil it's grown in, if it's salt grown, if it's not. Like we try to keep all that data, and I think like you said, it's going to be what's important at the end.
It'll help us navigate the future. That's a guarantee, and it'll help us, like not make silly mistakes. Like an example I use all the time when people are like, "Well, how are your different modalities of extraction going to help any company that's growing?" And it's like, well, a really basic example would be that, say you were wanting to do dry sift and you were a grower and you didn't really realize that as a grower who wants to do dry sift, it's probably going to be best that you get a cultivar that produces the majority of the trichomes are capitate stalked and capitate sessile. The bulbous heads tend to just stick to the leaves, and they're not as effective at coming off with mechanical screen separations or even water extraction. And I've also often noticed, because I'd see these oil guys go, "Oh yeah, we're getting a 25% yield." And I'm like, that's weird, because like the same water hash, same material is getting like a 14% to 15%. And that's dry, the true return. And I just wondered, why is that happening? And then what I put it together was that they're accessing, what they thought back in the day was that they were accessing resin that was inside the plant. Well, from what I had learned from science, that wasn't really something that was happening. I learned that all the resin was being sort of created inside the glandular trichome, inside that little sort of laboratory. And so I figured out with my macro photography, look, these bulbous heads are sticking around even after they're washed. So the cultivars like Renee and the ones that really reigned like hash plants for me were ones that had very small percentage of those heads. I would macro photograph some people's plants, and I'd swear 50% of the heads on the plant were these bulbous heads. And I thought, wow, now imagine you're a big company, you want to make dry sift, and you roll the dice wrong, and you get a cultivar that just has 50% of these bulbous heads, and you put all this investment and time and money into it, and you're trying to, grow great weed and dry it and cure it properly. And now when you start doing your sifting, you're like, we're only getting like a 5 or a 6% yield. And it's like, yeah, you would have been getting a 12 to a 15% yield had you just understood that these different types of trichomes are accessible in different ways. And so I'm excited to sort of create those data points as well.
One thing that we hadn't touched on much either that I think plays a huge part is just harvest and prep and storage. I think that is honestly just as big as your whole run throughout the whole year, and your wash and your dry too. Just because, I don't know, I've noticed a lot of differences in the gardens in not only yield and quality, but even just at the time I harvested a plant. I like to harvest plants later in the afternoon and at nighttime, and try and harvest in the colder hours, just because I've noticed, when I pulled stuff in the daytime or early mornings and it just starts to get hot while you're working and trimming for fresh frozen, that stuff just starts to get sticky and almost grease in the bags, and it just makes it a lot harder to work with when you put it in water and ice and get stuff. It's just one of the things I've noticed, with outdoor resin and full sun resin.
Well, it goes back to that chef SOP. You want to make sure your grower is doing that through and through, because we've all seen AAA or quads or whatever they're calling it now, 10 A's in a row or whatever. The highest quality herb can really be deteriorated by multiple grade points by being improperly cured and improperly stored. So that sort of post-processing, that, pre-processing, getting it ready and preparing it, I think the grower and the hash maker really have to have a line of communication there.
Yeah, the prep work is huge. Going from 2 facilities that are on the rec market and seeing 2 different ways of prepping material, it makes a huge difference, versus putting it all in trays, stacking it up real high, and letting the resin sit on each other, versus harvesting straight off the plant in a cold room, in a cold grow room that's dark, straight into small freezer bags that go right into the freezer. That's the method that we really prefer to do. It's the same few people doing it every time. So, and it is all in-house. So the lab that I wash it is, feet away from where all the resin is being grown, all the material. So it's easy to be able to see the plants, see the materials, see how it's being handled, and it takes multiple freezers to do that, to store, 100,000 grams of fresh frozen takes a couple large freezers, to keep it in small bags spread out. So you're not putting a bunch of material on top of each other and compromising the material. It's really important if you are trying to make full melt and not just a rosin grade production, hash. There's a big difference in that.
Bobby, I've seen 100,000 grams slammed into one freezer, and I could tell you that shit was kind of a nightmare. I mean, it was like
pulled it out like an ice cube.
Yeah, like a fucking ice cube. We had to do the longest soak on it just to get those bricks
to break up.
And we knew from day one there was no pull and melt off this stuff. We got rid of the 90 and 120 bag, caught it all in the 70, pressed it all.
Yeah,
it worked,
sure.
but it was like, yeah, dude, for sure. You don't want to be overpacking those bags. You don't want to be doing bags that are too heavy. Like
you can lose
middle of the day outdoors. The worst time to harvest fresh frozen. Like you can smell the terps getting cooked off. You can see the resin just smearing all over everything. Like
just flying everywhere too.
Good point.
It's rough.
Prepare your plant matter properly and make sure that people aren't doing stupid shit with it. If you're not the source of your plant matter, definitely have access to the grow. Yeah, I'd want to be going and having full access to be able to test anything I wanted to be able to look at anything I wanted to, open any door or drawer I want to. I want to just know that the cannabis is being properly grown, and if it hasn't or wasn't, that's okay too, because those are really important lessons where you can kind of learn. It's okay if you're doing it wrong, because doing it wrong is literally how you learn how to do it right. If that isn't the craziest shit ever. So don't feel bad if you are doing it wrong out there. There's a lot of good points that people have dropped today in regards to genetics and breeders and little tips and tricks and pre-pro-pressing and processing post with sieving and microplaning. I was kind of space on the microplaning, but yeah, they're very different things. There's lots of different good information that's been dropped today. Definitely want to come back to do more of this. I want to apologize to the entire group of rosin people. I had, let me see. I had, Rackham's, who's just been working the entire time. He's like, fuck this. I'm just word. Like it. Covert Extracts, Pedro's Grow Room, Roxy Gray, Ogre Resins, Dogman Troop, and Goldilocks, who made it in for the hash. So I don't have to apologize to you. But sorry to those guys and gals that we didn't make it in today. I appreciate your understanding. The hash conversation just seemed to be able to go the full 3 hours. And I'll just plan it for next week if, we'll get to 15 or so people. So I already have 8 or 9, so there's room for some more. If you want to hit me up on Instagram, or some of these guys in the panel want to do it, you can hit me up. Thank you all for coming in, from Best Friend Farms to Goldilocks to Taste of Cascade.
Yeah, man.
True Hash Company to Heavy Ice and Great Lake Grease, Wook Sauce Winery and Resin Ranch Extractions, Adam Lee Simpson, and damn it, Bobby, Rackham's, of course, and Ganja Gill, setting the tone with the like, this means more to me. I like that, dude. I really did. Dude. It means more to me too. I think that's one of the reasons, it takes me down many different avenues, but the source has always been that it means more to me as well. And that's why I give it a great deal of respect, treat it, like the queen that it is, and just try and see everyone have access to this beautiful, beautiful plant and resin that we are all so obsessed with. So, thanks everyone for hanging out on this Hash Church. I'll make sure I have you guys back.
Thanks for having us.
If you guys,
thank you.
If you guys want to shout out where you can be found on Instagram, I think that would be fair. I'll also put it in the comments section, and I'll also post it in the comments of the Spotify, Google, and Apple podcast sites that this will be showing up in on the next few hours. So you want to start, best friend?
Just like it sounds, at Best Friend Farms, Instagram.
Where Goldilocks?
Goldilocks 710 on Instagram.
And that's LOX.
LOX.
Word. True Hash?
At True Hash Company.
Beautiful. Taste of Cascadia.
It's Taste of Cascadia and 6 Star Society.
6 Star Society. I like that. Heavy Ice?
Heavy Ice RX.
Great Lakes Grease.
Perfect. And
Instagram.
Wook? Oh, you're muted.
Find me at Wook Sauce Winery and then at Fully Melted CA as well.
Oh,
resin _ranch _extraction, because I deleted like 6 times.
I bet you when we picked our Instagram name, some of us didn't think that it'd be like, damn, why did I put those fucking underscores and dots and periods and fucking things that don't fit into the human language when I'm trying to tell people where my website. That's awesome. We'll check you out. Hey, Adam, you got to unmute.
Yeah, that's simply Adam. So at simp.lee.adam.
Okay.
Thank you.
Damn it, Bobby.
Yo, yeah, you can find me at Damn It Bobby. You can find our hash here in Portland if you're in Portland or the area at Archive Portland and Burnside Collective Garden. So feel free to check us out.
Word. Rackums, unmute yourself.
There you go. Rackham's right there. RAKKEMS.
Beautiful. Need no introduction. Ganja Gill.
At Ganja _Gill on Instagram. And my more hash motivated page is at The Real Ice Wook.
The Real Ice Wook. I like it. Well, I'm BC Bubbleman here on Bubbleman's World. Thank you, everyone. You know, for those of you that it hasn't happened yet, may the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. Peace out, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
That's what's up. Peace out.
Saved by the